Ever since Orion was born, mysterious glowing orbs have haunted the air around him, floating through town like only he can see them. Later in class, his teacher leans in and explains that mana is the life energy that floods the whole world, and magic is simply what people can do when they learn to control it. It was first forged as a survival weapon, built to keep monsters from tearing everyone apart. The teacher kicks the lesson off again, claiming that anyone born with the right talent can unleash magic just by speaking the chants. Meanwhile, Orion sits dead still in his seat, scribbling notes and locking in on every single word. As Orion watches the teacher show off, he spots the glowing spheres in the air vanish the second magic hits, and that makes him almost certain those orbs are real, physical bursts of mana. The teacher clocked just how locked in Orion was, then decided to test him on the spot, calling him to the front to see if the lesson actually clicks. Just as Orion tries to move, another student rockets his hand up and blurts out to the teacher, cutting him off instantly. It's a kid named Daniel, grinning like he already won, and he tells the teacher Orion trying is a total waste of time, because Orion has zero magical talent. Emily steps in and tells Daniel to knock it off, but he throws up his defenses and snaps at her, demanding if she's really going to take Orion's side. Daniel whips around to Orion, jabs a finger in his face, and snaps that he needs to quit acting like a chosen one, saying all that pretending to see things is just Orion begging for attention. Orion shoots Daniel a furious look at the accusation, then speaks cool and steady, telling him he's not playing games or chasing attention. Orion looks back on his life and realizes the real nightmare. He's surrounded by mana, yet he has zero talent to use it, and everything gets harder because of it. While the other kids train their magic, he's stuck inside his own head. In a flashback, a hooded man lunges forward and tenderly steadies Orion, whispering that he knows it's been a brutal road for the boy up to this point. Orion tells us this is the day he finally met the old man who'd later become his teacher, and he still remembers staring at him, like the guy could see straight through his soul. The old man locks eyes with him and tells him straight up to stop hating himself, or the eyes he was born with. As glowing mana orbs drift between them, the teacher leans in and tells Orion that one day his weird, rare vision will become exactly what the whole world is begging for. As the memory slips away, Daniel erupts, screaming Orion's name at the top of his lungs, then jabs a finger straight at him and declares he's officially out of the party. Orion gets blindsided and snaps, "Daniel, what's going on?" like he can't believe it because they've been a team for ages. Daniel doesn't want to hear a word. He snaps, screams at Orion to shut up, and lashes out that he's nothing but a useless loser. Orion froze in the doorway, utterly lost, and snapped, "What do you mean calling me useless?" Daniel just flashes a smug smirk and tells him he's nothing but dead weight to the group, and he's honestly shocked Orion still hasn't clocked how hard he's been dragging them down. Daniel keeps coming at Orion nonstop, ripping into him for tagging along with a legendary hero's party while he still can't nail even the simplest magic, and then he delivers the final blow, saying Orion only stayed this long because they were childhood friends, so Orion should be thankful they never threw him out sooner. Orion won't argue, he already knows the truth. He drops his gaze and admits, plain and brutal, that his magic doesn't meet the rules and doesn't work the way it's supposed to. Even with all his flaws, Orion refuses to back down and argues that his magic has always saved the party, barely even getting the sentence out before Daniel snaps, cuts him off, and orders him to shut his mouth, while the other girls stare at him in pure disgust. Daniel barrels right up to Orion, screaming that his magic is so pathetic it's pointless whether it even exists, and it won't change a thing for the team's success. Orion's jaw drops when he realizes Daniel's been swallowing all this rage in silence, and then, bam, Daniel keeps hammering him with words, calling it humiliating to have a loser in the group who can't even handle the 6 basic elements. Orion tries to wrap his head around the whole plan, and the worry gnaws at him. Are they really ready to lose the one guy who's been keeping all their magic running so far? He knows once his support spells are gone, their combat power is going to crash hard, especially if they stumble into enemies that only magic can even touch. Instead of listening, Daniel bursts into laughter. He totally shrugs off Orion's warning like it means nothing. Daniel flashes a grin. He's already one step ahead, already locked in a replacement. He's scouted a veteran mage with the legendary quadruple element title, and he's ready to step in and take Orion's place. The news slams into Orion like a punch, because he knows that title goes only to the absolute best mages alive, and once he realizes the party has someone of that level joining them, it hits him hard. He's basically useless to them now. With no way out, Orion finally collapses into acceptance. He tells Daniel he gets it, admits that if this is what they're feeling, there's nothing they can do. Then he reaches for the door handle, ready to walk out for good. Daniel wastes 0 seconds. He snaps at Orion to get lost and slams him as a total dropout. Orion doesn't throw insults back. He just wears this small, sad smile and admits he's actually grateful they got to travel together for as long as they did. Daniel flashes a twisted grin and practically whispers that he can't wait to see Orion rod. Then he drags him for being a useless mage, clueless even with the basics, and vows he'll savor every second as Orion's life crumbles now that he's been kicked out. Orion slips away from the group and storms into the hallway, marching straight for the exit. Then the big question hits: what does he do next? As he trudges deeper into the woods, it finally hits him. His guild has stamped him as rankless, and he knows that with no real rank, no one's going to risk forming a new party around him. Orion looks back and realizes his old party was built from nothing but his childhood friends, and the weight of it crushes him because they'd stayed together for years, and now that past is just vanished. He flashes back to a whole year ago, right when the party was born, and that first day still hits him like it's happening again. In a flashback to his training, a young Orion tries to copy the rules of modern magic, screaming for the mana of flame as he chants, demanding it form a roaring bolt of fire to scorch his enemy. No matter how hard he tried, nothing budged. Orion froze, stared at his hand, and watched the silence win because the mana wouldn't answer his voice or his chant at all. It finally hits him. The real culprit isn't the magic around him, it's modern magic theory itself, and it doesn't match a single thing his eyes see, so he snaps to the conclusion that once he's forced to use chants to steer mana, he'll never pull it off. Instead of sticking to textbooks, Orion throws caution aside. He stares straight at the glowing orb of energy and shouts at the crimson mana right in front of him. In a wild flashback to their school days, Emily remembers how Orion finally quit talking about his power to see mana orbs, so she shadows him from afar, watching him visibly change. Emily remembers Daniel used to bully Orion, calling him out and labeling him a compulsive liar, and now she realizes Daniel was probably just dumping his own hunger for attention onto Orion. Even when the whole town insisted Orion had zero talent for magic, Emily watched him hit the training grounds every single day, stubborn as hell, refusing to quit. Emily goes hunting for him, sure he's still planted at his usual training spot in the woods, and over nearby, Orion's locked in, staring at one spot while calling out to the crimson mana drifting in the air. Emily slams to a stop, eyes exploding wide, staring at something she can't even begin to explain. Orion screams for the magic to ignite, and boom, a colossal, swirling fire orb erupts inches from his face. Emily just stands there, stone still, utterly frozen as her mind can't even begin to process the sheer scale of that power. Orion looks totally blindsided. He stares up at the fire he just spit into existence, stunned out of his mind that he actually pulled it off. Emily whispers his name, and Ryan jolts like he got caught mid-mistake. Then he clocks the look on her face, because she just saw the whole spell, including that weird way he cast it. Orion clocks just how rattled Emily is when she asks how he did that, and then it smacks him. This magic he's using isn't normal at all. It's something their textbooks insist shouldn't even exist. Orion lets out a hollow laugh as he looks back. He knows Emily must have been terrified after seeing that, but he's grateful she kept his secret and never spilled it to anyone. Orion starts picturing his future and realizes that masking his real power just to fit in with new friends is exhausting, so he decides to hold off on joining yet another party for now. He pauses in the forest and stretches out, officially declaring, solo for a while. After grinding his heart out inside the hero's party, he's finally cashing in that break he's earned, peace, quiet, and nothing but him. Since he's got zero rush on his hands, he's using his free time to dig into the mystery behind his monocycle. Those eyes aren't random, and he finally has the time to hunt down the truth about what his power is really doing. The story cuts to a brutal mountain pass. Wolves swarm in and corner a carriage, while a young female mage with her hair and pigtails stands her ground, clutching an open magic book as the predators growl inches away. The merchant in the carriage looked frantic and asked if she could really pull this off, so she waved it off, apologized for the fright, then snapped, "Get back and hide in the luggage," before stepping up to deal with the wolves. She locks in on her targets with razor-sharp focus, then shouts for the fire mana swirling around her to answer her call. A glowing magic circle snaps to life under her feet as she finishes the chant, and she screams a command. Flames rush together into a brutal strike meant to smash her enemies. With a scream, she hurls a blazing fireball straight at the lead wolf, and the hit is instant. Heat blasts down the path like a shockwave. The spell slams into the wolf, and a fiery blast rips across its body. Then it howls in raw, burning pain. Seeing her in action, the merchant's jaw drops, and he blurts out praise for her magic like it's pure miracle. Right then, hope slams back into him, and he finally feels like they might actually make it out of this alive. The pigtail mage's confidence crumbles fast. Sweat pours as she realizes she's way over her head, frantically thinking of her next move, while behind her the merchant cheers like it's already finished, clueless that they're in deep trouble. Everything's spiraling out of control. An enormous pack of monsters called bounce dogs is swarming the area, and the mage realizes there are way too many for her to fight alone. Through one wolf's eyes, that girl looks tiny and fragile as she scrambles to shield the carriage and the horses. She tries to slam out another fire spell, but her hands lag behind, and before she can finish the chant, a wolf rockets in with its jaws yawning wide. She knows there's no way she'll stop it. Right when the wolf is about to slam into her, a brutal blast of wind magic erupts out of nowhere and whips the monsters clean out of the way. Then the mage just freezes, clutching her book, completely stunned like, what just happened? Orion bursts onto the scene and yells, "Are you okay?" But she just gapes at him, totally lost, like she has no idea where he even came from. She thanks him, but her mind is still spinning. Then it finally clicks. The insane, mind-blowing magic she just witnessed. Yeah, that had to be all him. As Orion stands right beside her, she scrambles to save face, telling him the truth. It wasn't her fault. The enemies were just too many for one person to handle. She scans the scene and knows it's still a nightmare. More wolves keep spilling out of the trees, and she has to admit she's barely managing to hold them off. She glances at her book, locks eyes with Orion, and says, "I know we just met, but I really need your help." The pigtail mage locks eyes with Orion, her face set like stone, then drops her pride and asks if she can borrow a slice of his strength to survive what's coming. Orion doesn't even blink. He flashes her a warm smile and promises, without hesitation, "Of course I'll help." Orion stared out at the snarling swarm of wolves and began reading the energy rippling through them. Blue and green mana orbited everywhere, but red mana was barely there, so he immediately started weighing how to tackle the fight with what he had. Orion whips his back to the girl and kicks off a chant to build a fire foundation, and the mage is thrown into total confusion. What is he doing, especially when there's barely any red mana in sight? Orion lunges in, snatches a glowing orb, and calls it emerald mana. Then he starts bending that energy with his hand, whipping the air into a violent swirl as he gears up for his next strike. Orion barks one command, and the energy shatters outward. Then a massive spiral of wind magic erupts from his hand, ripping clean through the space ahead of the carriage. The wind doesn't just blow, it whips into razor-sharp blades, carving straight through the wolves, and the whole monster pack gets torn apart in an instant by magic. The mage is totally frozen in place, eyes blazing wide with pure shock. She's never, ever seen anything move that fast and hit that precise. The girl crumples to the ground, staring up at Orion like he's a walking nightmare, then blurts out, "Did you really just pull off chantless magic? Because that shouldn't be possible for any normal mage." Staring at the heap of defeated monsters, she can't even process it yet. She's still in shock, because there's no way he wiped out an entire pack of bounce dogs in just 1 second. The pigtail mage stares up at Orion, totally stunned, and blurts out, "Did I just see what I think I saw?" Because she's convinced he's a world-famous, high-ranking mage hiding behind a fake identity. Orion flashes this sheepish little grin, reaches out his hand, and tells her, "I'm Orion," then shrugs like it's no big deal, admitting he's got nothing special because he just got kicked out of his old adventuring party. She doesn't buy it for a second. She barrels straight into his space, eyes blazing with excitement, and demands again if he's really the Lord Orion she's been imagining. Orion gets totally thrown off by her fancy title. He blurts it back, stumbling through the words, looking awkward as hell, and can't figure out why she's suddenly treating him like royalty. The pigtail mage is lost in her own little world now, clutching her chest like her heart might explode, a grin screaming joy as she sways on the edge of fainting. She can't believe he showed up here, because she never thought she'd meet someone like him out in the wild. Orion just stands there, staring, already convinced she's mixing him up with some other guy. She leans in even closer, practically trapping him in place, and tells him that pulling off those simultaneous, chantless wind cutters is basically a miracle, because the way he does it has her dead sure he can't be anything but a master. Orion lunges to fix it, insisting what he used wasn't even a wind cutter, but she won't hear a word, keeps gushing anyway, while the merchant in the back finally exhales because the danger is over for real. With starry fire in her eyes, the girl blurts out a desperate plea, begging Orion to take her as his apprentice, right here, right now. When she locks eyes with him, her mind snaps back to her childhood. Everyone treated her like a magic miracle, and that's how the noble Berg family took her in. She finally marched into the Royal Magic Academy, the place where every genius in the country comes to shine, and even there, she stood out like a superstar, racking up top marks and learning 3 different kinds of elemental magic. Alice looks down at her own status and grins. She even got the rank of quadruple element since she can stack 4 different magical traits at once. Sure, she's proud of the power she carved out through training, but she won't just sit back and let it stop there. She still remembers that goodwill match from back then, when Orion stepped into the ring and her whole view of the world flipped instantly. It hit her like a thunderclap. Back then, she watched him and realized his magic was already firing before he even finished his chant, and that's when it hit her. He was totally faking the words to cover up how insanely fast he moved. In that exact moment, she couldn't deny it. Her magic was still miles behind his, and she felt it down to her bones. Right then, she set her sights on becoming a mage just like Orion, determined to stack quests back to back and shut that gap fast. Only, the wolves had other plans, and everything went sideways. Right in the middle of the present, Orion gets slammed with a gigantic steaming mountain of food dropped onto the table at a local eatery. Alice told Orion to order anything he wanted, then dug her heels in and insisted on paying for the entire meal, because she wanted to properly thank him for saving her and the merchant earlier. Orion fidgets and tells Alice he's already been thanked a ton, but she snaps back. One meal just doesn't cut it when she's trying to show real gratitude. The innkeeper strides over, glances at Alice's plate, and his face lights up with shock. Then he blurts, "Is that seriously all you plan to eat?" He lets it slip that she always orders food for 3 the second she walks in, and Alice totally panics, shoving a hand up to his mouth like, "Shut up," while Orion watches every second like it's the best show in town. Alice's cheeks burn with embarrassment as she blurts out the truth. One single serving of food just won't be enough for her. Orion stares at the gigantic plate already laid out, and he blurts that there's way more than enough food. Then it hits him. She's dead serious. As Alice digs in, Orion leans over and asks if she's really okay with eating all that. Then he fires back that for an adventurer, a massive appetite, and the ability to chow down whenever the chance shows up, might be one of the most important skills of all. Alice strides up to the innkeeper and shouts for 2 more servings. Meanwhile, Orion lets out a heavy sigh like, "Yeah, I knew this was coming." After the last bite is gone, Alice straightens up in her chair and locks eyes with Orion, her face deadly serious. She grips her hands in her lap, lets out a nervous breath, and asks him if she can finally introduce herself the right way this time. She shoots to her feet and introduces herself the proper way, Aliceberg. Then she tells him she graduated from the Royal Magic Academy and that she can wield 3 elements: fire, water, and wind. But she's not finished yet. She tells him she can stack those traits into a quadruple element rank and swears she'll never slow him down, then pleads with him to take her in as his student. Orion stares at her, totally blindsided, and realizes, yeah, being a quadruple element prodigy at her age is absolutely wild, like a world-class talent. He face plants, completely swamped, because he has zero clue what he's even supposed to teach someone as insanely gifted as her. The innkeeper slams down a massive, steaming platter of food and shoots them an apology for the brutal wait. The innkeeper bursts into laughter and slaps Orion on the shoulder so hard he almost chokes on his drink, then grins and says he's heard every story about the famous Orion, all thanks to Alice. The innkeeper barrels on, calling Orion a full-on revolutionary who won't play by the guild's usual rules, and Alice just sits there, squirming with pure embarrassment while he goes on and on about how she can't stop talking about him. Orion keeps shoveling food into his mouth, then laughs and tells Alice she's giving him way too much credit. He insists he's not some legendary mage, apologizes to her, and admits he can't take her on as his student. Alice looked absolutely crushed by the rejection, and she could barely even find the words to answer back. Trying to dodge the topic, Orion gushes about the food and quizzes Alice on what she thinks, but she just stares at her plate, shoulders sinking, like nothing is going the way she prayed it would. After they demolish that giant feast, they thank the innkeeper for everything, and he tells them, "Come back anytime, you're always welcome." Alice stood outside and thanked Orion, telling him he'd been a massive help today. Then Orion only grinned and admitted he'd had a fun time too. As Orion strides into the night, he can't stop replaying how freaking brilliant she is for wielding 4 elements. Then the realization hits. They're from different worlds, so chances are they'll never cross paths again. The next day at the Adventurers Guild, Alice barrels up to him grinning so hard it's almost wild, shouting for her master. Then Orion realizes there's no escaping her this time. Orion's temper snaps. He yells that he's already told her he's not master material, and Alice just shrugs it off, pulling a goofy face and sticking her tongue out like she doesn't care. They rush into the building, and right away a huge, muscular guy with a blindfold zeroes in on them. He demands to know what Alice thinks she's doing here, and Alice just shrugs it off, insisting it's pure coincidence they bumped into each other. Alice's cheeks flush hard, and in a total slip-up she blurts that she spotted Orion and tailed him. Then panic hits fast as she tries to claw it back, swearing she wasn't chasing him at all, but Orion only smirks inside, dead certain she followed. Orion snaps his focus to the guild's quest board, scanning every listing and size, then lets out a frustrated sigh because, yeah, he saw it coming. There's basically nothing worth doing for someone at his level. Alice presses Orion on what kind of quest he's really hunting, and Orion admits he hasn't locked onto anything yet, until he says his low adventure rank keeps throwing him off, like nothing worth doing will show up. A whole board of G-rank quests sits there: hunt down lost cats, scrub sewer slimes. Orion scans it all and mutters that it's exactly what he thought his rank would be, nothing but brain-dead chores. Suddenly Alice's mind lights up. She blurts out, "Orion, wait right there, just a sec." She bolts off, then snaps back a second later, clutching a stack of papers, shoves them toward Orion, and asks what he thinks about taking quests from that pile. Orion flips through the papers she brought, and while he admits the gigs look awesome, you can tell he's holding back, like something's scaring him. He leans in and tells Alice, "I can't just snatch these, I'm still stuck at G rank." He admits the pay looks great, but as a mage he's technically unranked, so he doesn't carry the status to take C or D rank missions. Alice laughs like she's got the perfect scheme, then bangs her hand on the table and tells Orion, "Right here, I'm the part that saves the day." She drops the bombshell that she's secretly a C-rank adventurer, then tosses him a loophole: make her your disciple, and you can use the guild's master-disciple system to take C-rank quests while she supervises you. Orion doesn't swallow it. He calls it out fast, saying that story is way too impossible to be real, and that a G-rank somehow leading a C-rank disciple is a total stretch. He shoots her a sharp look and deadpans, "Should I just start calling you Master Alice? Because apparently she's the one with the higher rank." Alice snaps, waving her hands like crazy in pure panic, and tells Orion, "There's no way you should ever call me that." Orion tells her to chill and snap back to reality, because yeah, he swears he was just joking. Orion snaps into serious mode and tells her straight up she's got nothing to gain by letting some unranked nobody like him become her master. Then she points out how heavy the Adventurers Guild really is in this world. He tells them the guild's rankings are hooked straight to an adventurer's status, so since the guild has already stamped him as unranked, Alice trying to make him her master would look like she's straight up challenging the guild's authority. Orion leans in and reminds her she's a graduate of the Royal Magic Academy, destined for something massive. Then he insists he'd never want to be the reason her reputation gets torn apart. Alice shuts it down instantly. She refuses to hear another word and yells that she doesn't care about her career or what anyone thinks about her. Alice's eyes fall, sadness hits her voice, and she tells Orion, "I don't want anything fancy, I just need you to teach me magic." Orion's face tightens, and he tells Alice she's probably rattled by the danger they just survived, like the chaos is throwing off her judgment. Alice refuses to hear it. She pouts hard and snaps, telling him that's absolutely not true. With her voice turning serious, Alice tells him there's magic out there no academy ever teaches, then says she's going to chase every single lid, because she's dead sure Orion's magic is the key to everything she's searching for. Orion rubs his chin, staring her down, because it hits him she's not backing off an inch. He lets out a heavy sigh, then finally caves, just a little. He tells her, "Just stay here and watch me for a bit. You'll see exactly how I do things." Alice's jaw drops as Orion tells her, "If you still feel the same once time's passed, I'll hear your request again." He leans in and asks what she thinks about the deal, praying that once she cools off, she'd finally see it his way. She's gonna realize just how wild it is to crave someone like him teaching her. Alice lights up and blurts out if this is some kind of entrance exam to become his disciple, but Orion instantly slams that idea down and tells her she's totally wrong. Alice tells Orion, "Since this is only a trial run, I'm going to prove myself so indispensable that you won't even survive a day without me." She steps straight into Orion's space and tells him, in no uncertain words, to brace himself for what's about to hit. Orion grips his head in both hands, overwhelmed to the bone, staring at the mess his life has become and begging himself, how did it get here? Soon the two of them crash into the lawnmower forest. Orion shuts down the master and disciple plan for now and says they'll stick to a basic G-rank quest first. Alice is thrilled. She cheers at the top of her lungs and agrees instantly. With stars blazing in her eyes, Alice declares she's about to soak up every single thing she can from him, starting today. Orion catches her glittering smile, and suddenly the pressure hits hard. He mutters that it's crazy awkward for her to expect the world when all they're doing is standing here, picking weeds. He drops a fair warning: "Come along if you want, but once you see how mind-numbingly boring the work is, you'll regret it fast." Alice snatches a look at the quest sheet and spots the task clear as day: red and green herbs, no tricks, just a straight-up gathering mission. Alice points at a strip of trees and tells Orion to head over to start searching, but Orion shoots that idea down on the spot, saying she doesn't need to waste her time. Orion says he's hunting green and orange mana, then shoots out his hand and barks a command, forcing the mana to scan the whole area. Mona orbs burst into the forest, zipping through the air like lightning, and Alice just stares, totally baffled by what Orion is up to. Glowing spheres plunge into the bushes and hover right above those exact plants tucked away in the dense greenery. Orion towers as his magic rages across the area, and Alice just freezes with her mouth hanging open, trying to wrap her head around how much mana he's dumping for something this simple. Orion stared into the forest like a hawk, locked in on every detail, certain the search was running exactly as he'd plotted. He tells Alice he's basically nailed down where everything is, and she stares at him like he's lost his mind, then blurts, "What on earth are you talking about?" Across the whole clearing, dozens of glowing orbs burst to life like lanterns, each one pinpointing the exact spot of the herbs they're hunting. Orion dives his hand into the tall grass and yanks out a flawless specimen, then smirks as he inspects it and says, "Not bad at all." Alice completely loses it. She's screaming from pure shock because he slid past the quest's searching part like it was nothing. She demands to know how he could possibly spot that herb just sitting there, and Orion only stares at her from his kneel, then says it's no mystery at all, because that's exactly how his magic works. Alice forces herself to buy the explanation, like it sounds right on paper, but the moment she imagines it actually happening, her brain just refuses to click, while the orbs keep scanning and calling out even more herbs right nearby. Alice is still shaking from what she's witnessing, stunned because she's never come across detection magic this sharp and precise. Never, not once. Orion just waves it off, saying he doesn't even know how to use high-level techniques like detection magic, then strides to the next spot and calls out even more herbs sitting right there. He stares at the plain red and green herbs and worries he grabbed the wrong stuff. Then he shows her the new plant he just picked, and it instantly grabs her attention. Alice totally snaps, screams at him, and blasts, "Do you realize you're holding a yellow herb?" She tells him it's an insanely rare material, but Orion's just staring at her like she's speaking another language. Then he blurts out, "Is it really that big a deal?" Alice starts carefully stashing the herb away for safekeeping, while Orion just stands there staring, thinking, seriously, that herb wasn't even that hard to find. Right then, Orion's face flickers. Silence drops over him as he stares into the distance, watching the manhwa in the air begin to shift. He cranes his neck toward the trees, and the mana orbs twitch with restlessness, forcing his mind to race. What in the world is happening? The comm search snaps in an instant when a hulking, bone-armored monster smashes through the trees, and Orion instantly knows something deadly is out there with them. Alice jolts in fear and blurts, "Orion, did you hear that horrifying roar just now?" Orion and Alice are meant to do a basic G-rank herb-picking quest, until everything snaps, and Alice panics, yelling Orion's name, while he stays cool and tells her that something is absolutely lurking close by. Alice gaped forward, stunned by what loomed in the distance, the massive dark monster standing between them, swallowing the rest of the forest in its shadow. Alice snaps to attention at once, blurting out, "Wait, are you really an orc king?" The thing grins like a nightmare, flashing brutal tusks and icy white eyes that make your blood run cold. Alice trembles as she blurts, "Why would a monster this high-level even show up in a low-level zone?" Meanwhile, Orion doesn't flinch, he just keeps a hawk-sharp stare locked on the beast. Alice tells Orion this forest is usually a safe haven for beginners, but he just shrugs it off, then casually says they should probably kill it, and Alice's head basically explodes with rage. Orion doesn't wait for a plan, he strides right up and thrusts his hand toward the monster, yelling as the green and orange mana orbs hover in the air. The moment he commands it, the mana snaps to life. Then a gigantic blow crashes out of the sky and slams the orc boss before it even gets a chance to move. Orion slams the spell down to the heavens, and boom, a storm of giant boulders crashes from above, smashing the monster until it's buried under the weight in seconds. Alice just stares, mind completely blank, trying to wrap her head around how casually he shrugged off a boss-level threat, while Orion exhales like it's nothing, waves off the leftover mana, and orders it to disperse. When the dust finally clears, Alice snaps awake, then bursts into a long, gut-punch scream of pure shock at the nightmare she just saw. Alice is still reeling from the explosion when she fires off. What kind of magic was that? Orion just scratches the back of his neck, looking awkward, and shrugs that it was basically a meteor strike. Alice snaps out of her calm and shouts that this wasn't just some fancy high-level magic. He actually pulled off a triple spell, and he didn't even chant once. Orion tries to brush it off and steer the talk somewhere else, but Alice steps in right in his face, no mercy, pressing him hard until he finally has to explain what's going on with his power. Alice lays it out, an orc king is a monster threat, the kind that usually takes a whole squad of A-rank adventurers to stop. Orion's jaw drops with real surprise, but deep down he's already kicking himself for letting his true power slip. They both stare at the huge crater where that monster used to be, and Alice shrieks that landing a solo kill on something like that is straight up impossible, while Orion realizes he's gotten far too used to showing off with her watching. As Alice crouched to stare at the ruins, Orion's voice turned razor serious for a moment. Then he asked, "Be honest, does my magic creep you out or just feel weird, since it's way beyond anything normal logic could explain?" Alice gazes up at him, grinning bright, totally baffled, like, why would he ask something like that in the first place? She stares at her own hands, and her magic feels like it's barely warmed up. She's got a long road ahead, and tells him, straight up, that if there's even more potential waiting out there, she'll chase it with everything she's got. Alice practically glows with excitement. She swears he's the best mage in the world, then grabs the title and calls him Master for real. Alice is beaming like she just won the world, but Orion is unraveling. Sweat pours down his face as the shocking title and crushing praise hit him all at once. Orion locks eyes with Alice and realizes she's a girl fueled purely by ambition, while the crushing weight of those burning expectations settles on him like a storm. He starts panicking that letting her become his disciple is a terrible idea, because he can't shake the fear that if she follows him, she'll waste her whole life and it'll all fall on him. They march straight for the Adventurers Guild, and Orion decides to crush her excitement by dragging her through the most boring, everyday bits of his routine. At the guild counter, Alice slams down a giant basket of herbs, then shouts that the quest is done and demands the staff take the delivery. The guild receptionist is totally stunned. She stares at that mountain of herbs and blurts, "How did Alice snag all this? You only grabbed the job this morning." The receptionist starts calling Alice out. Those aren't yellow herbs, because she brought back the wrong plants, and as they go back and forth, Orion hangs back and realizes his cover plan totally blew up. He tried to disappear behind boring work, but now it's turning into a crushing, time-wasting mess for Alice. Orion changes the game on the spot, locks eyes with Alice, and tells her it's time to leave this behind and move on. He leans in and tells her, "Starting tomorrow, I'm ditching simple gathering quests. I'm going all in on magic research." Alice's face lights up instantly. She steps right into his personal space and blurts out, "Wait, am I really going to be allowed to watch my master do magic research?" Orion gets totally blindsided by her wild, crackling energy, like he should have known she'd react that way, given how obsessed she is with high-level magic. The story cuts to the Scorched Dungeon, and inside the group panics when they realize Orion is gone for real. Then someone blurts, "Did he really just leave us?" Emily, the party's ranger, is completely unraveling. She demands how they're even supposed to hunt a dragon without Orion, and Luna, the knight, snaps back that this has to be some kind of cruel, sick joke. Daniel stares at them like they've lost it and fires back, asking why they're freaking out over nothing. Then he shrugs and says Orion being there or not changes nothing, because a nobody like him can't make a difference. He declares this mission is a dragon hunt, then sneers that since a failure who can't even cast basic magic can't handle it, the gear's probably too heavy for him to lug, while Emily just slumps there with her head down, looking absolutely wrecked. Emily is completely stunned. She stares at Daniel like, "What the hell are you even talking about?" She whips back through their old battles and realizes the brutal truth. Every time they survived, it was Orion's magic quietly holding everything together, sealing the holes and covering their screw-ups the whole damn time. Daniel won't buy it for a second. He snaps at her that it's flat-out impossible. Then he presses her hard. Why would Orion be unranked if he's really as good as she claims? Emily starts to speak, then cuts herself off. Her voice disappears as she struggles to find the words, looking away in panic. She suddenly remembers being a kid in the woods, staring at him like he scared you, and then it hits her. That fear was her doing. Orion decides right then to start hiding his special powers from everyone. Emily can't force herself to explain it to Daniel. She just stands there with a heartbroken stare, while Daniel's annoyance keeps rising with every second of that awful silence. Daniel totally snaps. He's screaming at the girls to shut up, and when they keep talking, he turns defensive fast, barking, "Are you seriously doubting my judgment as the leader?" He keeps posturing like a badass, insisting it's no big deal that they're hunting a dragon, and swears that with a hero like him, the whole quest will be a cakewalk, while Luna and Emily just stand there, drained and clearly not buying it. Emily shot her gaze away, guilt punching her in the chest, wondering if Orion finally snapped, sick of everything they've done, and walked out for good. Luna starts to catch up to the truth. She looks completely shaken, realizing Orion was the one carrying the whole team the entire time. As Daniel stomps deeper into the dungeon, it's painfully obvious he's the only one clueless about what's happening and just how much they needed Orion. The scorched dungeon's heat starts to crush down on them. Daniel is drenched in sweat already, and he's shouting at the top of his lungs about how scorching it is. Daniel is basically losing it, demanding to know why it's so scorching, while Emily looks totally wiped and snaps at him to shut up, reminding him they literally just stepped into the dungeon. Emily grabs a drink to cool off, but the intense heat is whooping her. She's fighting just to stay steady. She finally cracks why this time is so brutal. Back then, they were comfy only because Orion kept blasting his magic to control the temperature for everyone. Daniel is still stuck in denial, snaps at her to shut up about that dumb stuff, and he's so packed with rage that he doesn't even see it. An enormous monster horde is creeping in on them from the shadows. Luna whips her hand over Daniel's mouth to silence him, hissing that he needs to shut up. His non-stop yelling is already riling up the dungeon bats nearby. Emily spots the danger before it strikes. Then she yanks her bow up and aims straight at the shadows where the monsters are lurking. The moment the massive swarm of bats explodes from the ceiling, everything turns to chaos fast. Emily stares at the sheer numbers and realizes they're boxed in from every side, then blurts out, "So what's the plan?" Even Daniel can feel the pressure closing in now. He looks wiped out, and deep down he finally admits that tackling something like this without Orion's help is going to be way harder than he ever expected. Even with nerves chewing at him, Daniel squared his shoulders like a fighter, draws his sword, charges straight into the swarm, and orders the girls to trust him with everything. Luna lunges to stop him, but he's already vanished into the chaos. His big hero moment lasts about 2 seconds, then a bat snaps onto his head and starts gnawing, yanking him off his rhythm until he's screaming in agony. Daniel thrashes around, griping that he can't land a single hit on the tiny, slippery targets, while Luna stays calm, smug, and says she knew this mess would happen exactly like that. Luna slams up a protective barrier to shove the bats back, but you can see she's on the verge of collapsing. She grabs Emily's attention and blurts out, "So what are we supposed to do next?" Because her defenses can't hold forever. Emily yanks out a special arrow with a crystal hook to it, grins and says, "I've got this." Then she snaps to the crew, "Get ready, sprint like your lives depend on it." The party bolts for the exit. While they backpedal, bruised and beaten Daniel drags himself along and keeps whining, baffled that it's always him getting trapped in this miserable spot. After that brutal run through the cave, the whole group feels wrecked. Luna looks absolutely drained, and she snaps that if they keep pushing like this, hunting a dragon will never happen. Then she turns to everyone and yells that they need to find Ryan fast and beg him to come back to the party. Daniel totally snaps after the suggestion. His face turns bright red, rage surges, and he yells that he's not doing something that embarrassing. Then he tries to save face by barking that it was just an off day and that it's no big deal. Even while everything feels impossible, Daniel's ego fires back. He won't quit. A fierce look snaps onto his face, and he swears he'll finish the dragon-slaying quest no matter what, and he'll do it all alone, with zero help from Orion. Soon, the whole party storms into the Adventurers Guild to straighten things out, only for the receptionist to glance at them with pity and tell them the guild already sent a message that their request got officially denied. Daniel immediately starts a full-blown scene at the counter, yelling that there's no way a top-tier hero party could get rejected like this. Luna tries to yank him back and tell him to calm down, but he's too busy spiraling into a tantrum. While Daniel is blowing off steam, he suddenly insists they could clear dungeons with ease if they'd just bring along a real mage. Right then, his eyes snap across the room. He spots Alice at a table, and he points her out to the girls. Alice just wants to mind her own business, but she can feel Daniel's eyes drilling into her. She whips her head over, instantly ticked off, convinced he's being a total creep for staring like that. Daniel flips on the charm and strides in, striking a completely ridiculous, sparkly pose, then flashes a grin and asks Alice, "So you're the Alice everyone's talking about, right?" Alice isn't buying it for a second. She shoots him a skeptical look, nods and says, "Yeah, that's my name," then wastes no time and fires back, "So who do you think you are?" Luna tries one last time to get Daniel to stop bothering people, but he shrugs her off like she's invisible, standing tall, grinning wide, and proudly declaring, "I'm Daniel, the leader of the legendary hero party." Alice repeats hero party to Daniel, her voice slipping as the meaning clicks, and she realizes exactly who she's been talking to. Her eyes slice tighter and tighter as she stares him down with ice-cold fury, then she demands, straight to his face, if it was them who kicked Orion out of the group. Daniel totally ignores her tone and keeps flexing like he owns the place, claiming the guild's missing the whole story, insisting he's only there to scout her, then bragging about how wild it is that she's mastered 4 elements at her age, and pushing that he wants her power for his team. Alice cuts him off mid-sentence with a brutal no, and Daniel's face just crashes, like his brain can't process the instant rejection. She just strides right past them, snaps that she's got somewhere to be, and tells them to clear out so she can leave. Daniel panics immediately, sweat pouring off him as he blazes after her, shouting that he has to know why she just turned down a massive opportunity. Panic hits him hard. He screams about perks, promising she'll get fame, status, and everything she could ever dream of if she just stays, and then he even swears he'll pay her whatever she demands. Alice pauses for a beat, spins her gaze back, and admits it. Saving the world isn't some casual gig, it's a huge responsibility, and for most people, that kind of role actually matters. Then a soft smile blooms on her face, her cheeks flush, and she blurts out that she knows just who he means by Orion, and she desperately wants to stay right beside that person. While Daniel and Luna just stare, completely stunned, Alice finally spills the truth. She's locked onto her own life goal. She's staying with Orion, no ifs, ands, or buts, so she's not joining their party. Daniel freezes for a second, eyes stressed, trying to play it cool like it's nothing. Then he nods like he understands, and immediately asks who this person is that she can't stop staring at. The second Daniel spits the name out, sweat erupts across his face. Then he yells that she's talking about Orion, and it slams into Luna so brutally she freezes, utterly stunned. Daniel's vibe snaps right back to full jerk mode. He tells Alice to drop the whole idea, because Orion's nothing but unranked trash who couldn't even pull his weight in their party. He keeps pushing, taunting Orion like there's no way he'll ever survive as a solo adventurer. Then Luna looks down, uneasy to her bones, and blurts out Daniel's name, begging him to stop. Alice finally snaps, terrorist pressure pours off her as she glares at him, and she tells Daniel straight up, even if you're the hero, there are some things you just don't say. Her stare hits like a knockout. Daniel totally buckles, starts whimpering, and looks 1 second away from snapping under the pressure. Daniel recoils as the room thickens with Alice's fury, and the truth hits him. He's absolutely terrified of the mage he was just trying to recruit. He looks like he's one heartbeat away from breaking, barely choking out a word as Alice keeps staring him down like it's a showdown. Suddenly, Alice's face flips, like her thoughts just snapped into place, and she blurts out that she was wrong for how she reacted. Alice immediately sinks into a deep bow, apologizing again and again, then blames her own temper, because she couldn't stay silent while he kept insulting the person she looks up to. Alice's face turns bright red as she buries it in her hands, groaning that she's completely ashamed for losing her cool like that. Alice glances at Luna and tells her, "Don't worry about it," but you can still see how rattled she is that a party leader would say something like that. Luna can only shoot back a shaky, awkward smile. Alice finally snaps, announces she's leaving, and tells the group she can't keep Orion waiting a second longer, while Daniel cowers off in hiding, completely drained and humiliated in the background. When Alice storms off, Luna drops her gaze, drowning in regret, replaying the moment she blew her chance to ask Alice what Orion's been up to lately. Watching Alice fade away outside the window, Luna can't stop worrying. What if Orion's not okay? She snaps the thought down fast, because after everything, she knows she has no right to show her face to him anymore. Back inside, Daniel's blood is boiling. He clenches his fist, lets out a low, furious shout, and can't believe how that conversation turned out. Luna tries to snap Daniel out of it, telling him he's the one who messed up and that he needs to treat Alice way nicer, but Daniel snaps back hard, barking at her to shut up and quit bossing him around. The tension in the room hangs heavy, and right away, the tavern crowd starts huddling and whispering, trading questions like, "Did you see what just happened? Did you all catch it?" The gossip spreads like wildfire. People are straight up roasting Daniel for freaking out over a girl and for the way he suddenly snapped and lashed out at her. And one guy even claims he heard the current hero's only special because of his master, Edward. Daniel hears every word they toss around, and it drives him up the wall. He glares like he's attacking the air itself, realizing his reputation is getting wrecked way harder than he ever imagined. Daniel finally snaps inside the tavern, whips around at the crowd staring at him, and screams for them to get lost, because his life isn't some show for their entertainment. He's betrayed and right at the breaking point, while Luna stands nearby with a worried look on her face. Luna yanks Daniel toward the exit, telling him they've gotta vanish, while Daniel stares like he's 1 second away from blowing up from pure, non-stop frustration. As they head out, Daniel's growling with pure rage in the background, and while Luna drifts, she can't help wondering what Orion is doing right this second. Meanwhile, Orion slips back into his room, calm as ice and laser-focused, clutching his notebook like a weapon, and telling himself it's time to tear into his work for the day. He stares at his book, Introduction to Magic Asterisk, and starts picking apart why everyone keeps failing to kick their spells into gear. Orion plops onto his bed, bathed in the glow of mana orbs only he can see. He knows the usual issues are low mana or crappy visualization, but since he can asterisk see every drop, he just barks commands and turns mana into magic on demand. He finally gets it. This one-of-a-kind power is the exact reason his life is a tangled mess of trouble, and before he can catch his breath, Alice's voice slices in from the door. Master. Orion swings the door open and freezes. Alice is already there, surprisingly early, smiling like she's been waiting all morning, ready to leave. Alice flashes him a huge smile and blurts out that she's been bursting with excitement. She couldn't wait one more second. Alice asks what they're researching today, and Orion says he's sticking to the basics of magic, but he warns her it might feel a little boring compared to what she's used to. Orion's nerves start to spike as he realizes, if he keeps botching even the simplest spells, Alice will finally clock he's a fraud and regret ever taking him on as her student. He refuses to back down. He thrusts his hand forward and chants for fire mana to surge in and slam down, while Alice trails right behind him, staring in total awe like she knows something huge is about to explode. Orion tells her to brace for what's coming, and Alice just stares at him like she's got a giant question mark floating above her head. Then Orion clocks the same awkward standoff keeps happening all day, and he's still getting nowhere. Alice finally snaps and screams, "Why isn't the magic activating?" Orion's glow turns bright red as humiliation hits him for failing so badly in front of a literal magic genius like her. He keeps cycling through the elements, yelling for fire, then wind, then water mana, over and over, and still nothing hits, so he can't ignore it anymore. He's striking out across the board. As Orion keeps getting shut down, he starts to think Alice has to be at her breaking point by now. He's betting she's already done with him, completely finished. Sweat pours down his face as failure after failure crushes his mind, and then he snaps, giving it one more desperate shot, begging the mana of the earth to move, to do anything at all, just to save his pride. Right when he's about to try again, Alice shoots her hand up and yells his name, grabbing his attention instantly. Orion glances her way, and you can tell she's about to snap. He's sure she's finally fed up with his clumsiness and is ready to tell him off right there. He's completely useless. Alice looks totally unsure, eyes down as she admits she's probably being a little rude with what she's about to say, but Orion brushes it off completely, telling her it's totally normal to feel that way, so she has nothing to worry about. That sparks Alice to life, and she blurts out that as a mage, she can't stop herself, she has to know what's happening. Orion's thrown off by her sudden burst of energy, and she just shoots a confused look like, "Wait, what are you getting at?" Alice jabs a finger upward and bluntly demands to know if he's really doubting those magic textbooks, and whether he thinks they're nothing but lies. That thought slams into Orion like a punch, and he just freezes, staring ahead, suddenly wondering if those magic textbooks could have been lying to him the whole time. Staring at a pile of dusty old books, Orion suddenly realizes he never once questioned the world's proven theories, like maybe they're the ones wrong, not him. He'd always assumed he was the broken one, and basically surrendered on ever truly understanding magic. He locks eyes with her and asks if she's seriously some kind of genius for calling that out. Then boom, Alice is completely flustered, face burning and blushing hard. Orion starts digging through the shelves, and the second his perspective flips, he realizes there's no reason to keep studying these old traditional theories. Alice just stands there watching, looking genuinely confused. Orion spins back to Alice and says he's got a favor to ask, and he needs her help too. He jumped in out of nowhere and caught her totally off guard, just like that. Alice starts out eager to help, but the second she hears Orion's real plan, her patience snaps, because Orion's standing there clutching a basket stuffed with scales, asking her if they're wind dragon scales and why he's hoarding so many. When she questions it, Orion shrugs and says there are likely way more back in the warehouse, then tells her he wants to use them for an experiment. Orion kicks things off, already knowing that feeding mana through those scales will spit out exact green and blue mana orbs, so he hovers his hand over the basket, and the mana flares to life exactly like he predicted. The room's been arranged like a trap for fire magic, so tough it should barely work at all, and Orion leans in to tell Alice he's counting on her, getting a confident nod right back. Alice snaps into position and shouts for the fire mana to manifest, while Orion fixes his eyes on her, itching to watch every single shift of that mana as it happens. Right then, Orion's eyes snap wide, cold sweat bursts out of him, and he stares at something that absolutely shouldn't exist, because he can't wrap his head around what's happening in front of him. From his own eyes, the mana lights up the moment the chant demands it, charging in and turning into the foundation of fire. Then it smashes into him. The way everyone else thinks magic works is totally backwards to what he's actually seeing. As the chant snaps into the air and the magic starts to strike, Orion realizes the mana doesn't fight back at all. It just shifts colors and obediently falls right into the spell's logic. Alice yells fireball, and the room that was supposed to smother it instead gets blasted. Then a massive wave of fire explodes out, and Alice can't hide her shock at how violently it hits. Orion is completely rattled and blurts out to Alice, "Didn't you feel something weird?" But Alice just stares back at him, stone calm and silent. Totally lost, like, why is he freaking out so hard? Alice stares at Orion, completely lost, and asks what's got him so fired up, because to her, everything looks perfectly normal. Then the truth hits. People back in the day only used incantations so they could cast magic without ever having to see mana orbs, and Orion realizes that for everyone else, this invisible magic flow is just normal. Orion cuts in and says, "Next, let's try wind magic," and Alice nods instantly, thinking this is just a simple test to see how well the scales work as a catalyst. Orion can't stop replaying the word catalyst in his head, and then it hits him. He's actually having a blast. He figures that since nobody else can see the mana orbs, they'd swear the scales are the ones powering him, not just tweaking the mana that's already floating around. As they gear up, Orion admits to himself he's got zero clue how people study magic these days. Then Alice starts chanting, summoning the spirits of the wind to gather. Orion stares at her, realizing every technical word she throws out is brand new to him, plus he's not even sure she's got a clue what he's hunting for. Still, Alice locks in, grits her focus, and commands the wind to dance. Even though they don't click on everything, Orion can tell they're both buzzing to test new stuff. Alice yells, "Windcutter," and launches the spell, blasting sharp gusts straight through the air. Orion bursts into laughter, riding the wave of that successful test, wipes the sweat from his brow, and tells Alice they've got to find the rest of the scales and keep the experiments running. But then Orion suddenly stalls, like the truth slams into him out of nowhere. He snaps to it he totally screwed up, because he dove way too deep into the research, and now his whole scheme depends on Alice giving up on being his. He's supposed to be an apprentice, but nope, he's been glued to her side this whole time, geeking out nonstop. Alice is fully locked in on the research now, practically sparking with excitement, and she peppers Orion with, "What other scales or experiments can we try next?" Later, the story jumps to the Adventurers Guild, where Daniel's posted at the front counter, and the receptionist greets him in a formal, "Hero Daniel." With Orion back on his side, he shrugs off control and lets the chaos play out. Sure, his attempt to scare Alice off bombed, but hey, it's okay for now because he's genuinely enjoying himself. At the guild, the receptionist tells Daniel that the guild master, Edward, wants him right now, and Daniel's standing there completely baffled, wondering why he's getting yanked in so suddenly. As Daniel strides toward the office, a heavy pressure creeps into his chest. He can't stop thinking about what his master could possibly want from him right now. Daniel bursts into the office, and there's Edward, already waiting behind his desk, staring him down and calling out his name the second he steps in. Out of nowhere, Edward bursts into full-volume screaming and calls Daniel a massive idiot, right in his face. Daniel trembles uncontrollably, drenched in cold sweat, and blurts out to his master, "What could you possibly be furious about?" Edward cranks up the pressure and fires off, asking Daniel what he was thinking when he exiled Orion, and Daniel's whole body locks up with panic, stunned that his master somehow found out. Daniel tries to save face by snapping at Edward that Orion was nothing but a rankless nobody, but inside he's spiraling, because part of him still believes Orion just bolted. And somehow, not a single soul was there to witness his exile unfold. Edward is done. He slams his palm over his eyes and lets out a crushing sigh, like the world just drained him. So I can't believe his ears. His student is being that dense. He leans into Daniel and tells him the guild couldn't rank Orion because Orion's magic is completely off the charts, and the usual checks they rely on just can't measure someone on his level. Daniel's shaking hard, drenched in sweat, and he can't bring himself to believe a word of it. He keeps insisting it has to be impossible. In his mind, Daniel still plays the big shot hero, convinced he's the whole center of the party, the one who's carrying everything and doing the heavy lifting for the girls. It's starting to gnaw at him, because the guy he used to look down on is actually the one carrying the whole team. After the exile, the truth hits hard. His mage girl snaps him out of it and tells him to look reality in the eye, and Luna is suddenly in full panic when she finally understands that Orion is actually gone. In a flashback, Daniel gets completely surrounded by monsters, frozen like he can't fight back, while Edward spits the truth. This party has been nothing but constant failure ever since they tossed Orion out. Daniel stumbles through excuses for their recent defeats, hands trembling as he insists they're only stuck in a slump for now. Edward doesn't buy a single word. He locks eyes with Daniel and grills him, asking if he honestly thinks all those disasters were. Daniel slumps down, head hanging low, looking completely defeated and way smaller than he should. Before his master's desk, he slumps and mumbles that it's just a slump, but his voice gives him away. He doesn't buy it for a second. Edward storms out of his desk, leaving Daniel stuck there in dead silence, and he throws one last warning over his shoulder. Drop the pride, call Orion back, or he'll be too late to save the party. Daniel looks like he's one breath away from shattering, confessing, I'm the one who messed up, but deep inside, fury roars as he vows, I can't screw around anymore. His ego won't let him step back. He keeps chanting to himself that he's the hero, and that his judgment can't be wrong, even as he tries to drown the truth in nothing but denial. Next, Orion and Alice stroll through town side by side, and Orion's mood dips fast. He blurts an apology, admitting he keeps dragging her into casting magic for his tests without ever telling her the real reason. But Alice just lights up, smiling like he's done nothing wrong, because she says she actually learns a ton from his experiments. She rants about how amazing it feels to practice magic with top-tier catalysts, and in her heart, teaming up with Orion is the absolute dream setup for any mage. Orion tells her he's happy she's got this arrangement to make her feel right, but he still holds back, like something stuck behind his smile. Meanwhile, Alice doesn't catch a thing, humming to herself as they keep moving. Alice is so deep in her own daydream that flower petals and sparkles float around in her mind, and she's dead sure this simple walk through town is really a date with her master. She gets so hyped she whirls in circles and dances right in the middle of the street, and Orion snaps his head over, baffled by her sudden burst of energy. Then he asks what's going on. She tries to play it off like it's nothing, but the excitement is still all over her face. Orion starts overthinking everything she does for him, and he's determined to repay her with a gift or some big gesture, yet all he can do is stare blankly, stuck with no idea. He ducks into a local shop to ogle some little trinkets, then realizes, way too fast, that he's totally in over his head, and he admits to himself he has zero. So what kinds of stuff do girls actually love? Orion gets completely thrown off when Alice bursts out loud to the shopkeeper, demanding another serving, and she's practically vibrating with excitement about the food they're about to get. Orion screeches to a stop, yells her name to lock her attention, and shoves a giant, steaming bun into her hands. Then Alice's eyes explode into stars as she stares up at him, stunned, and blurts out if he's really sure it's okay for her to have it. Alice gets choked up and swears she'll treasure the gift from her master for the rest of her life, and Orion just snaps back that she needs to stop acting dramatic and dig in before it gets cold. Orion asks if she's even hungry, because that bun is seriously huge, and Alice tries to play it cool, claiming she's not hungry at all, until her stomach erupts with this massive growl and blows her cover instantly. After throwing in the towel, Alice thanks him with real sincerity, then digs into the food while they stroll through town. She devours the food, yells that it's the best thing ever, and she looks like she's straight up in paradise. Later, the two of them crash down at a table on the balcony to finally breathe, and Orion glances over at her and admits, straight up, that the magic she showed him earlier genuinely floored him. He flashes back to her casting magic in the library, marveling at how fast she read the room, then tells her the truth. What stunned him most wasn't even the power, it was how unbelievably gorgeous her magic looked. Alice totally snaps and turns bright, like her whole soul just exploded. Heat flares bright red across her cheeks from the compliment, and she scrambles to play it cool, insisting she's still nowhere near his level. Orion goes for round 2 and tells Alice he's not even sure he could pull off the same magic she just did, so when she hears it, her face floods with red and she feels awesome, until guilt hits and she blurts that sorry for burning through a top-tier catalyst like that. Orion waves it away, shrugging that it's no big deal, because he's the one who asked her to do it in the first place. The vibe snaps the moment Alice peers into her basket and panics. Every last red dragon scale is gone. Orion's face falls hard. He groans that it'd be a total waste if they can't keep testing that insane magic. He refuses to let them quit right there and pushes them to grab more supplies. He's sure the local guild will have what they need sitting on the shelves. They head for the guild, and Orion strides up to the counter, snapping for the receptionist's attention, no games, telling her he wants to buy red dragon scales. The receptionist's eyes widen. She's totally thrown by his request. She checks his adventure card, frowns hard, and blurts out, why would a guy with just a G rank need an ultra-expensive, high-end catalyst? Suspicion sharpens in her eyes as she locks onto him, then straight up demands what he's even planning to do with something that high level. Orion shrugs off the question with some vague, it's just a little research, but the receptionist snaps back, grilling him like, yeah, overreaching like that, not a good look. She presses on, telling him magic has to be handled in a way that matches his status. Then she bursts out laughing. High-quality materials won't suddenly make his skills better. Alice completely snaps at the disrespect and starts screaming at the woman for speaking to her master like that. Orion has to grab her, hard, clamping down on her rage, trying to stop her from blowing everything up right there in the middle of the guild. Orion is fuming because the guild's shelves are totally empty of red dragon scales, and the receptionist just raises an eyebrow, asks if he really wants them that badly, then teases that if he's desperate, he should go harvest them himself. Orion actually thinks it over and admits that would be the quickest way to get the job done, until he remembers he can't even step into a dungeon without the guild's permission. The receptionist laughs and tells him to stop taking her sarcasm like it's a real warning. She tells them the permission system exists just to stop reckless low-ranked idiots like him from stumbling straight into their deaths. Then she laughs it off, while Alice in the background looks furious for Orion, like she's ready to fight someone. Alice yanks Orion's sleeve out of nowhere and starts tugging like it's an emergency, and Orion shoots her a confused look, asking what's going on. Alice bursts in, saying this is the perfect moment to officially register their master-disciple bond and prove he's earned his place. Then, right when she finishes, a loud voice booms from across the room, snapping their attention to it. A towering adventurer with a staff strides up to the pair and asks, point-blank, if they're looking at Orion, the guy who's been messing with Alice the whole time. The man introduces himself as Jais, bragging that he's beer-ranked and sizing up Orion with a nasty look that screams, "I'm better than you." Jai flicks a finger and blurts that deceiving is just a nicer word for what Orion is doing. Then, right there in the hall, he slams down a jaw-dropping declaration. He sneers at Orion's rank, claiming a coward like him would get charred the second he dares to step into a high-level zone like the scalding heat cave. And right there, Alice is beside them, puffing her cheeks with raw, furious rage at the disrespect. Alice won't stay silent. She screams that her master could one-shot a dragon, and as she pictures Orion casually blasting the monster into dust, Orion. Fran can't shake the feeling that her expectations of him are climbing way past where they should. Jai starts a full-on meltdown, screaming that the whole situation is ridiculous, and Orion at the next table just watches, stunned that Jai still can't understand why a genius mage like Alice would ever choose to be his disciple. Jai's rages harder, glaring down at Alice, insisting he can't stand people who act like they're a big deal when they've got zero real talent to prove it. Alice finally snaps and fires back. She screams that she's the one who begged to become Orion's disciple because she actually likes him. Then she tells Jai to shut his mouth about a man he doesn't even know. Jai just fixes her with a cold, annoyed stare, like her words mean nothing. He's not listening, and he's definitely not taking her seriously. Before she can even get a word out, Jai suddenly lunges forward and yanks Alice by the arm, and the shock hits her instantly. She gasps, trembling as his grip clamps down hard. Jai grabs her and yanks her forward, insisting she dump Orion and become his disciple instead. Then he starts flexing nonstop, bragging that he's a triple spellcaster, all to win her over. He yanks her along again, buzzing with confidence, begging her to find a spot to talk, because he's dying to flex his magic knowledge. Alice fights back, choking out that he's hurting her, and snaps at him to let her go right now. Right when Jais thinks he's slipping away, a hand comes down hard on his shoulder, heavy as a boulder, and it freezes him instantly in place. Orion lunges in and slams his body to stop Jai cold, planting himself between them with a grim, dark glare, as his patience finally snaps at the B-rank adventurer's non-stop nonsense. Jai spun around, furious, and offended that this unranked nobody dared to think they could stand out. No one dares lay a hand on him. He glares at Orion and snaps, "What do you think you're doing?" Orion locks eyes with Jai and bluntly says Alice is clearly not having it, then pushes, "Maybe it's time you stop bullying people." Jai just flashes a smug grin like nothing can touch him, then spits back at Orion, "So what, an unranked nobody like you is really trying to start something?" Orion doesn't even blink. He locks his sharp stare on Jai's, and when he says, "If this is how it's going to be, I'm ready to push it further," the tension instantly spikes. Jai's face twists with irritation, and he scratches his head like he can't stand Orion. Then he glares down with a sneer, warning that the unranked guy better not dare underestimate him. Orion slams his hand down and declares, "We're dueling," then points skyward, swearing he'll beat Jai into the ground, right in front of everyone, so Jai finally regrets what he started. Orion strides up to the counter, and the receptionist just stares, completely stunned. Then he shrugs and tells her it's the way things are, urging her to start the paperwork for the duel. The receptionist stared at him like she'd just seen a ghost, eyes wide with pure worry, and asked straight up if he was really serious about taking on a B-rank adventurer. She tries to shake sense into him, yelling that the power gap between him and Jai is huge, so huge he'll be dropped in a heartbeat, while Jai just stands right there, grinning like he's already won. Alice stands there, trembling with pure dread, eyes wide as she glances up at Orion, because she can't shake the feeling something terrible is about to happen to her master. Orion leans in and pats Alice's head with a steady, comforting touch. He tells her straight up that in this situation, backing down isn't in him. Jai lets his smug grin sink in as the two of them stride into the guild's arena, right into the spotlight. Then they square off face to face to settle everything in front of the crowd, while Alice stares up at Orion with steel in her eyes and demands, straight to her master's face, that he has to win this fight. Orion ruffles Alice's hair one more time, grinning as he admits he can't possibly afford to lose this. From afar, Jai watched them, and irritation flared in his chest. Then he muttered curses under his breath. Giza's face twists with fury as he snaps at them to stop showing off right in front of him. At last, the signal blasts through the air, and the moment the match goes official, it's game on. Jai grabs his staff, tells Orion he'll expose the huge power gap between them, then launches into an incantation, demanding that Orion become the very foundation his flames are about to burn from. Jai snarls at Orion to die, then hurls a massive fireball across the arena like a blazing comet. Orion plants his feet and stares down the incoming assault. Sure, it's quick, but the mana burns an orange glow, and the chant is a total mess, nothing like Alice's clean magic. Orion lifts a hand and just yells protect to slam the spell to a stop, realizing Jai barely spent any mana, so the power fizzles out and the entire attack. It's nowhere near Alice's level. Every person in the crowd freezes in disbelief, eyes as wide as saucers as they stare down into the arena, while Jai looks like he's just seen a ghost, sweating buckets as he locks onto Orion. He forces a twitchy, nervous grin, but it's obvious he's rattled, and he blurts out to Orion, "What kind of trick did you just pull?" Jai snaps his finger, storms into a loud rant, and yanks his confidence back, screaming that Orion isn't unranked by skill. He's unranked because he's so pathetic he can't even survive basic magic. Orion just stands behind his barrier, staring like he doesn't care, and it only drives Jai off the wall. Jai snaps that he's using magic like it's nothing, then tells him to drop the attitude. Orion flashes a smug little smile and casually admits he still can't master chant-based magic, and Jai completely snaps. He's begging Orion to stop toying with him. Jai's done with the disrespect. He tells Orion his trash talk ends right now, then leans in, ready to slam everything he has into one final move. 3 massive magic circles bloom around Jai as he kicks off a high-level incantation, and he shouts for the fire spirits, ordering them to forge hellfire that'll incinerate his opponent. With a wild, crazed gleam in his eye, Jai declares that this is it. He's finally about to unleash his absolute best spell. Jai howls the name of his flare spell, and a roaring inferno blasts toward Orion, yet when that giant fireball barrels in, Orion doesn't even flinch. He calmly murmurs, "Protect." The crowd on the sidelines is watching, holding its breath, ready for what happens next, because you can feel the tension in the air. Are getting hit with pure dread, staring in total shock as that massive power crashes into everything around them. Orion braces himself as the giant wall of fire slams into his barrier, and Alice just stands there in total shock, realizing he's blocking a hit that should have crushed everything. When the smoke finally thins out, Jai locks onto the scene in dead silence, because the barrier is still standing tall, even if a few nasty cracks have split from the impact. Jai's sweating buckets now, staring at the magic with wide, trembling eyes. He can't believe his own vision, and it hits him. Orion must have fired off multiple spells at once. Jai tells himself, yeah, pulling off defensive magic like that usually takes at least double casting, but this, multiple casting, is a whole different beast. Meanwhile, behind the wall, Orion stays calm, smugly sure that his 2 layers of protection magic were plenty. Jai is totally losing control, jabbing a finger at Orion and blasting him as a brand new kind of rank fraud, while Orion just stands there, arms crossed, calmly telling Jai to head home before this gets any worse. Orion stays calm, then drops the truth. Jai, sorry, you're not getting past this, you're unranked. And when Jai pushes back, Orion tells him, if you've got beef, take it up with the guild. Jai erupts in raw, total frustration. Then the pressure of the fight finally breaks his staff in half with a sickening snap. Even with his weapon shattered, Jai clenches the broken pieces like they're sacred. He refuses to back off, and screams that he's a B-rank adventurer, daring Orion not to dare look down on him. Jai lunges forward, smashing the broken halves of his staff like deadly clubs, while Orion just freezes there with a blank stare, letting that desperate hit come straight at him. With wild eyes blazing, Jai snaps that he's about to smash that smug look off his face. Right off Orion, he kicks into a new chant, summoning fire spirits to supercharge his next blow. Orion jolts his gaze up as glowing orbs of mana whirl around him, and even as panic tries to creep in, he tells himself close range is risky, yet he's got a plan. He calls to the emerald mana to get ready, but Jai isn't letting him wriggle out. He barrels forward, yelling that Orion won't escape. As the gap shrinks, Jai keeps chanting a fire spell, ready to slam it into Orion the moment he's close enough. Orion locks onto the mana orbs and snaps a simple command. Then the spell surges, the world rumbles, and the ground shakes under his feet. Before Jais can even throw a punch, Orion rockets straight up into the air out of nowhere, leaving Jais staring at the spot he was just standing in, totally stunned and confused. Jai cranes his neck and boom, spots Orion's boots hovering inches above his head, and he immediately snaps, screaming his lungs out because he cannot believe someone is actually flying. Alice watches from the sidelines, stunned right alongside everyone else, and she can't help thinking, is that really flight magic? Because spells like this aren't supposed to exist anymore. Still hanging high above the ground, Orion thrusts his hand toward the glowing orbs again, and this time, he summons crimson mana to bend them to his will. Orion stared down at Jais and commanded the mana to ignite. Then a brutal fireblast exploded from the sky and crashed straight into the ground beneath Jais. Jai can only stare in pure terror as the flames engulf him, his mind screaming for answers while he can't even wrap his head around the crushing power racing straight for him. The dust and smoke thin out just enough for Orion to spot everything from above, and he knows it's bad because he's going toe-to-toe with a high-ranking mage. That one massive blast probably won't cut it. This fight's nowhere near over. Orion locks in, eyes sharp like he's about to end this, telling himself it's time to move to the next step. Meanwhile, Jai's sweat is screaming through a shaky grin as he blurts out to Orion, demanding he show exactly how he's going to follow up that last attack. Before Orion can even twitch, Guy's staff smashes the ground. Game over, he's outmatched, and he blurts out for a timeout. Jai throws both hands up in total surrender, laughs at how he landed himself in this mess, shouts that he was wrong, and officially calls it quits. The announcer froze in stunned silence for a heartbeat, then finally slammed the decision into the arena, yelling to the crowd that Orion wins. Alice wastes zero time, bursts over to Orion like she's floating on pure excitement, and blurts out that he was absolutely amazing, plus that he looked insanely cool out there. She keeps pressing on, gushing that she's never seen anyone nail that kind of high-precision magic, or pull off flight like he did, and now she's dead sure he's the greatest mage on the planet. In the back, Jai stays on his knees, utterly drained, while Orion shrugs like it's nothing and says he already knew this was coming from the start as they walk off. Alice smirks to herself, still stunned she ended up flexing her hidden strength, and even though it wasn't on purpose, she swears she doesn't regret a single thing. Alice says the whole arena can't stop talking about him, but Orion hates every second of the spotlight. He looks completely done with it, like he's exhausted. He grabs her attention and flat out asks her to let it go. The guild receptionist is still frozen in pure shock. She can't believe someone with no official rank just took down the veteran like Jai. Guilt hits hard, because she treated Orion like he was nothing earlier, and now she bows deep across the counter, voice shaking, admitting she's mortified that after all those years watching adventurers rise and fall, her professional eyes still missed his real potential. Orion never holds a grudge, not really. He flashes her a small smile, tells her to chill, and explains how anyone can get mixed up when high-end gear and catalysts are everywhere, masking the fact that some people just don't have real skill. His response slams straight into her, and she stares back with a deep, flustered blush, so overwhelmed by just how generous and forgiving he's being. The receptionist leans in and whispers that a nasty supply snag has hit, red dragon scales, and while she's talking, Alice's irritation spikes as she mutters that the receptionist is suddenly way too close to Orion. Turns out the supply shortage is all Daniel's fault. Him and the hero party went hunting a fire dragon, and they've been stuck on it ever since, still not even clearing it. When he hears the hero party is the one causing all this mess, Orion slumps back with a loud groan of pure annoyance, while Alice matches his frustration, clocking Daniel as the guy dragging everything down. Orion finally snaps and stops waiting. He turns to Alice and asks, like it's nothing, if the two of them should just go butcher the dragon themselves because the heroes sure aren't managing it. Alice gets blindsided by the suggestion, blurts a shocked scream, and demands, "Are you seriously talking about the two of us hunting a dragon?" She tells him it sounds like a straight-up suicide mission, and even the receptionist jumps in like, "Yeah, I know he's strong." Going after a dragon is on a whole new level of insane. Orion tries to shrug off the danger, saying the fire dragons are basically easy since their weaknesses scream the whole time. Then he even tells Alice she can handle it with barely any trouble, but Alice just stands there. She stared at him like he'd lost his mind, then snapped, "Are you really serious?" Orion leaned in and pushed harder. If he could take down the dragon alone, maybe he'd finally consider taking her on as a disciple. He then waved it off with a quick laugh, like it was nothing, and teased, "So are you gonna back out just because you're too scared to follow through?" Alice refuses to back off. Her eyes suddenly blaze with understanding, and she blurts out that she finally gets what's happening. Orion's left standing there, totally thrown, trying to figure out why her tone flipped so fast. Alice explodes with excitement, insisting this dragon hunt is her final test to become his student, and Orion can only make a confused little sound as he realizes his attempt to scare her off utterly backfired. Orion breaks into a cold sweat as he stares at her steel-eyed determination, and he can't wrap his head around the fact that she's genuinely thrilled to dive into a suicide mission. Alice is all in now. She screams she's ready to go and calls him master, and even though Orion tries to hit the brakes, the guild receptionists are already swept into the chaos. One is tearing up at Orion's rough love lessons, saying he's like a lion kicking its cub off a cliff, while the other bolts away to file the hunting permit right now. Orion slumps there, hand on his face, utterly wiped out by how fast everything spiraled out of control, while behind him, Alice is on cloud nine, beaming as she shows off her fresh permit and swears to her masters she'll work harder than ever. Elsewhere, the air feels way heavier. Daniel rallies his group, swearing they'll clear the dungeon today, no matter what stands in their way. Luna and the other girl in the party looked like they'd hit rock bottom, miserable, drained, and Luna finally asked. Daniel doesn't even blink. If they're going back in there again, then that's it, because it's the only option they've got. Daniel grips a glowing magic stone, and the pressure hits him like a truck. He tells himself his party has to prove they can clear dungeons without Orion, ASAP, because he's not letting his master think they can't handle it alone. Meanwhile, inside the scorching heat cave, Alice is melting from the heat as she blurts out how insanely hot it is, and Orion just shrugs like it's nothing while they push deeper into the rocky tunnels. Orion snaps into action against the blistering heat. He spots blue mana drifting in the air, jabs his finger at it, and barks a command that makes the energy start swirling around them. The change hits like lightning, and Alice gets absolutely blindsided. Her eyes go wide in shock, then she grins, laughing, because suddenly in that cave it feels unbelievably cool. Orion shrugs and says it's no big deal, like if they kept running that hot, they'd just crash and burn before the job even ends, but Alice isn't having it. She snaps at him to quit pretending it's easy and demands to know what kind of logic lets him make a move like that. Orion flashes her a quick smirk, shrugs off her question like it's nothing, and says he'll explain the whole thing later. Orion suddenly has a jolt of realization that totally throws him off. He flails his hands around, freaking out at why his brain instantly assumes Alice will stay glued to him from here on out. Alice has zero clue what's got him panicked and just stares back, completely baffled. The duo keeps moving down, and Alice quickly realizes they've already hit the third floor. This is going way smoother than either of them expected. Alice kicks off the exploration by casting her own magic. She starts chanting, summoning wind spirits to whip up a sharp breeze and scout the ground ahead. Once the spell finishes its job, Alice whips her head back and gives the all clear. She's already sure there aren't any. With monsters lurking nearby, they can't afford to stop, so they keep moving for now, safe for the moment. Orion fires a question at Alice about that magic she just used to scout the area, and she beams as she explains it's called the compressed incantation arrow blaster, her perfect way to track where monsters are hiding. Orion then mouths the technique's name to himself, looking completely stunned, and the truth hangs in the air. He's heard of the idea, sure, but he never thought he'd actually see it with his own eyes, and now he's stuck staring, trying to figure out how a move like that even makes sense. Alice clocks his confusion instantly and braces herself to lay out the magic theory for him. Usually, casting a spell forces a mage to picture the exact outcome in their mind and nail every single word of the chant perfectly, but with the compressed incantation theory, they can skip the whole long routine and slash the time way down. Orion rubs the back of his head and admits he's no expert in modern magic theory, but he still tells Alice it's an incredible skill, and that gets her laughing out loud. Alice's mood sours, and she pushes Orion onward, snapping that he's her master. Orion just grins and nods like, yeah, it's time to dive deeper into this cave. As they walk, Orion can't stop thinking about how insane Alice's magic was, so he grins and decides he's going to pay her back by showing off his own skills. As they push through dark, jagged tunnels, Orion flicks on his special vision and scans everything ahead, mind sending a sharp command to find the way forward. He's hunting for the fastest way down to the next dungeon level, but as he scans the area, something totally unexpected snaps his focus. Orion's face hardens, he freezes on the spot, and tells Alice his search just snagged something, because they're not alone. Because there's someone else on this floor with them. Alice reels in shock and fires off the question to Orion. Can he really see that much detail with his powers? Orion stays calm and says, yeah, but warns it's not just about what he sees. Then he swivels his gaze forward and his tone hardens. Things are getting dangerous fast. Far ahead, a colossal swarm of monsters surrounds the group, and with enemies piled in so thick, counting them is pointless. Alice can't believe he's actually picking up all that info, but Orion stays calm and tells her, "Since you're with me, we'll be fine." Orion stops mid-step, stares at her, and asks if this whole plan is really smart. Who in their right mind dives into a mess like that on purpose? Alice meets his eyes, trying to make sense of his worry. Alice locks in, tells Orion they can't stop and have to keep moving, and makes it crystal clear she's strong enough to handle herself in there. Orion just grins at her confidence, then tells her he's got zero plans to be a burden or drag her down. Orion nods like he finally gets it, and the pair press deeper into the story. Then the scene snaps back about 30 minutes earlier on the very same floor. Daniel's yelling that they've already smashed their way to the third floor. He's clearly battered, but he still acts like the whole climb has been ridiculously easy. Luna lets out a sharp, long sigh, clearly fed up with his attitude, and snaps that he needs to stop acting so overconfident, because they're about to step into unscouted territory. Daniel tells her to stop being so cranky, but he waves it off with a laugh and blurts, "This quick pre." Their progress just proved Orion, of all people, was never the missing piece their party needed anyway. Daniel is hyped to the max, yelling that today's the day they finally wipe the dungeon clean and take down the fire dragon, so Luna watches him, baffled, because they only made it this far on the first try thanks to Orion being with them. Then she notices it. They've nearly drained every recovery item, and leaning on magic tools without a real mage is starting to hit its limit. Right as she thinks that, a terrifying noise cuts through the air, and Luna instantly knows something is about to crash into them. A giant rock monster slams into view with a thunderous crash, and Luna shrieks at the group to stay sharp and be careful. Luna slams down a defensive spell, Ground Field, to shield the party, and behind that glowing barrier, Emily steadies her bow, looking way too stressed for comfort. Luna strains to stay standing, blurting that going up against a monster like this is pure nightmare. Then the golem erupts in a thunderous roar that rattles the whole area. Luna shrieks at Daniel, sick of him charging in solo again, but he totally ignores her, then barrels straight at the massive stone golem with his sword. Daniel gets slammed so hard he yelps, completely crushed by the monster's overwhelming power. Daniel groans on the floor, cursing the pain and staring up like, what just happened, not yet noticing his foot has slammed a hidden mechanical switch tucked in the floor. Daniel jolts upright in a sweat as a massive shadow crashes over the group, then a thunderous rumble erupts, freezing everyone in stunned silence at what's about to happen. Daniel shoves back and screams that none of this is his fault, and Luna jabs a finger at him, yelling she doesn't care whose fault it is, It just needs to do something, anything, that can actually fix this. Daniel and Luna look absolutely wrecked after the golem's hit, but right when they try to regroup, Emily snaps, "Wait." She senses something's off, then boom, a massive roar rips through the cavern. Everyone realizes the noise they've been making isn't just echoing, it's luring every monster in the area straight to them. Daniel stares down the road, stunned, and blurts, "Are you serious? Some kind of sick joke," because a brutal wall of goblins and lizard men has packed the path tight behind the giant stone golem. The pressure crushes everything. Luna flicks her gaze away, utterly drained and defeated, while Daniel starts hyperventilating, shaking, sweating, and frozen in terror. Daniel snaps, drops to his knees, and starts weakly begging someone to come save them. Then he erupts into screams for a savior, but Emily just stares at him with pure, crushing despair, because he knows nobody's coming. Emily snaps her eyes shut, praying this pitiful moment isn't truly how their journey dies, and as doubts crash in, she fears it might just be the bill coming due for everything they've done. When everything hits rock bottom, she can only think of a single thing. As she thinks of Orion, she sees his warm smile and remembers how he always reached out to help, and now she can't stop wondering what he's doing right this second. Guilt slams into her like a wave, and she finally gets it. She spent the whole time leaning on Orion's power, doing nothing when it actually counted. Lizard men and goblins surge in, lunging to finish them off, and as the monsters crowd closer, Emily starts begging the heavens for a miracle. Tears burned in Emily's eyes as she clung to one last thought. She had to survive this, and more than that, she needed a chance to find Orion and pour out her apology straight to him, right to his face. Right when the monsters are about to crash in, a colossal surge of magic slams the battlefield, boom, and a commander's voice orders the enemies to scatter as a massive blast wipes the whole path clean in an instant. Daniel freezes solid, staring like he just saw a ghost. Below him, Emily's eyes flare wide, locked on the very spot where the monsters stood moments ago. Alice steps into the clearing, praising her master and smiling like she always knew he'd find the right person. Orion trails in right behind her, letting out a tired sigh, just relieved they made it in time to save the day. Daniel can't believe what he's seeing and yells Orion's name, but Orion stays cool, shrugging that his trick only hits weak, low-level monsters, and Alice stares at him like, wait, weren't those supposed to be stronger than that? Emily is completely overwhelmed. She tries to speak, but her whole body is trembling so hard she can barely squeeze out one broken word. Then the tears spill as she stares at him, and she's sure she's dreaming, because there's no way life could line things up this perfectly. Orion glares at the group, while Daniel just crumples on the ground, still frozen in shock, until he finally snaps back and realizes the guy who just saved them is the same one they kicked out. Orion strides up to Emily and asks what's wrong the second he sees her wrecked face, because she's barely holding it together, sobbing that she genuinely thought she'd never see him again. Orion stares down at her, and it hits him. Things must be way worse than anyone's saying, because he can see they've been shoved to the very edge of breaking. Staring at the mess they're in, Ryan shoots a worried "you okay?" and offers to grab the lid and haul everyone back up to the surface, because they clearly can't keep pushing forward. The cave feels suffocating as Alice, Orion, and Emily stare at Daniel like he's snapped, because Daniel clenches his fist, growls that he's dead serious about their mess, and then, even after getting beaten and rescued by the very man he exiled, he lashes out anyway, roaring as he swings his sword and vows they're not backing down. He demands they press forward and strike the dragon, just like they swore they would. Emily is still an absolute wreck, tears pouring down her face as she stares at him in pure disbelief. Then she snaps, asking if he's really still talking like this after they almost died. Ryan and Alice say nothing, just lock eyes with Daniel, staring like their gaze could cut right through his skin. He feels the weight of it, panics, and lets out a frustrated groan because he knows he's totally boxed in. Daniel starts shaking, his finger trembling as he points straight at Orion, like he's desperately trying to claw back control, and then he decides to call Orion out face to face. With a creepy, desperate grin plastered on his face, Daniel leans in and tells Orion he's going to grant him the honor of joining their party again. Yet Orion just stands there, dead-eyed and stone-still, like he couldn't care less. The whole cave freezes in that split second. Nothing moves except one stunned little noise that screams, "No way, you really just said that." Daniel doubles down, flashes a thumbs up, and insists he's doing Orion a massive favor by letting him back in behind him, while Luna and Emily are left totally stunned, gripping their mouths as they can't believe Daniel is really being this delusional. Orion doesn't even look bothered. He just picks at his ear like it's no big deal, then scans the room like he's trying to spot who Daniel is actually talking to. Daniel wouldn't stop. He acted like Orion had truly returned, because he finally realized Daniel's magic was too vital to ever lose Orion. Ryan cuts him off mid-thought and snaps, "Nope, wrong, that's not it at all." Daniel looks totally unhinged, sweat pouring, twitching like a cornered animal as he scrambles to play hero. He insists he's letting Orion back in only because he still has sympathy for a former teammate. Orion doesn't buy it for a second and just looks numb with boredom, then deadpans, asking if Daniel is seriously still trying to sell that nonsense. The question hits like a punch, and Daniel freezes, looking even more pathetic than before. Just then Alice lunges forward, burning with rage, hands on her hips, planted like a wall, ready to rip into Daniel for every single lie. Alice snaps right at Daniel, calling him out as a full-on hypocrite. She screams that he booted his own master out and left him behind, then rips into his current offer as pure selfishness, telling him to finally learn some shame for pretending he's doing anyone a favor. The news smashes into Emily like a wrecking ball. She freezes, eyes popping wide, trying to wrap her head around the fact that she's been lied to the whole damn time. Emily finally finds her voice and blurts, "Hold up just a second." She looks completely crushed as she demands answers. "So tell me, did Daniel really kick Orion out of the party?" Luna isn't about to let it go either. She steps forward with a terrifying glare, demands Daniel explain himself and spell out what's happening, and right then Daniel starts sweating bullets because he's totally cornered. Daniel's panic explodes. He can barely get a word out, stumbling over his own speech as he scrambles for a lie, but the answers never show up. The girls won't let him slide. Emily confronts him about how Orion left the party by himself, while Luna snaps that he'd better start talking, disgusted that he kept something this huge secret from the whole team. Cornered so hard he can't breathe, Daniel finally snaps. He explodes into screams, begging them to stop grilling his choices, yelling that the outcome would have been identical no matter what. No matter what he tried. Alice shoots Daniel a disgusted look and snaps that he's the absolute worst for everything he's done. Luna can't stop laughing at how pathetic he looks, standing there sweating bullets. Right when the tension peaks, Emily finally interrupts and brings up Orion. Orion flashes Emily a gentle smile and tells her, "Don't worry about me." He assures her he's handling things just fine, trying to calm her fears. Emily's face lights up with pure relief as she smiles and tells him she's just glad he's okay, Sure, things are a mess, but right now she can't help feeling thankful he's still standing strong. Alice isn't about to linger. She jerks her finger toward the road and snaps at Orion to move, and the second he agrees, Orion starts gearing up to head out. Right before Orion leaves, he hurls one last burst of magic at his old teammates, telling them to chill, not push too hard, and make sure they all get back home safe. Luna shoots her arms wide, glowing with spellpore, and says Orion's support magic is the best there is. Then she grins like she's sprouting wings because her body feels so light. As Orion and Alice stride into the forest, the old party just stares after them, while Emily shouts one last thank you to Orion, making it crystal clear he truly saved them back there. Emily stood frozen, staring at his retreating back, and regret crushed her chest, because she finally admitted how badly she wanted them to keep marching together as a real team. She looks devastated when they finally split, realizing just how much she still needed to say before everything ended. I'd tell him, but now the moments vanished forever. Emily stares as Orion storms out, like she's seconds from shattering, but she knows she can't beg him to stay after everything, so she forces herself to move on, while Orion and Alice tear through the dungeon, breezing past floor after floor until they clear all 7 without breaking a sweat. They finally burst out at the end of the path and stop cold in front of huge, jewel-encrusted doors. Orion tells Alice it's time, and she snaps back, asking if he's really ready for what's behind them. Orion keeps his cool and stares straight ahead, while Alice calls him Master and dares him to just watch, because she's more determined than ever, and she's about to take control. They burst into the dungeon's deepest final chamber, and the moment they do, the whole place trembles as a gigantic foot slams down right in front of them. Turns out the big boss isn't some normal monster. He's a blazing fire dragon, and it's a massive, dark-scaled beast that looks far more terrifying than anything they've faced yet. The dragon snaps its jaws wide and rips a roaring shout through the entire chamber, blasting intimidation straight at both of them. That dragon's roar hits like a wrecking ball, pure pressure, so Alice has to brace herself hard just to keep from getting blasted backward. Orion starts to tell Alice, if this is too much for you, I can jump in, but Alice looks completely worn out and insists, no, there's absolutely no way I need you to take over. She swears she's totally ing fine, then cuts herself off mid-sentence. She steps forward and tells him to stay back. She's taking this dragon down all by herself. Orion listens to her, then thrusts a teleport crystal into her hands, warning her to use it the second things turn too dangerous. Before she steps off, he checks whether she needs any support magic or extra items, but Alice is so flustered she snaps that she's got it covered. She thanks him for watching her back, yet she refuses to back down, because if he's seeing her fight in real time, she can't afford to look pathetic or weak. She locks eyes with him and forces a promise. He will not, under any circumstances, jump in and help no matter what goes down during the fight. Orion finally throws up his hands, says he gets it, and takes his spot, because the moment she starts taking control, things go from tense to downright serious. Alice flings her grimoire open and roars through a heavy incantation, summoning an ancient fire meant to wipe the world clean, then a blazing magic circle ignites right above the pages. Orion stares as the mana surges, and realizes he's never, not once, seen a spell this massive cast right in front of his eyes. A colossal, finely carved magic circle blooms straight under Alice's feet, and she's pouring every ounce of power into it. Now the strain of the mana is flashing across her face. The fire dragon looms over her like a nightmare, but Alice refuses to flinch. Her spell ignites, and blazing flames start to coil around the beast as she braces to unleash the next strike. This is it, the legendary Quadra spell. Most people never even get to witness magic like this, and Alice is unleashing it right in the heart of the boss room. The dragon tightens its stance as the air blasts hot, and Alice is all in now, because everything. The higher dungeon chamber is about to get crushed by the full weight of her power. Orion is totally stunned by what he's seeing, watching Alice bend mana like it's nothing, then staring at how she might be shaping it freely enough to summon real, living solid magic, and his nerves start to spike as sweat breaks out, because he just realized he massively underestimated chant-based magic, and he never imagined it could hit this level. Alice shot him a look over her shoulder, clutching her grimoire while flames whipped around it, and she asked, "So, what do you think?" Then she beamed as she bragged that it was a spell she cooked up herself, fully original. She's beaming from ear to ear as she leans in and tells him, this magic is the most beautiful thing she's ever seen. The fire dragon unleashes an earth-shaking roar, and you can feel the pressure tightening as the spell keeps swelling around it. The strain finally slams into Alice, and she screams, "Repair the spell." A magic circle erupts in light as she shoves her mana into it, fighting to keep its shape against the dragon. She's swaying from exhaustion, breathing like each gulp hurts, but she grits her teeth and refuses to quit, yelling that she's got more fuel left in her. Watching her from behind, Orion can't help but rewind everything. Every spell and secret of Magic Alice has poured into his life since the day they met. To him, her old spells always hit like flawless masterpieces, crafted with care, polished to perfection, and tightly refined. But this magic hits different, raw, untamed, like she's spilling every ounce of her real life into the air. They force you into the spell, and that's what finally makes it work. Orion stares at Alice from behind, and the thought hits him. If it were him, he'd wait for the perfect opening to strike, not rush a monster head-on. Then he realizes that's exactly why Alice is unreal. She's brave enough to square up and go straight at. The dragon tears through everything using nothing but magic, and Alice fights to keep her repair spell alive, until the strain finally slams into her, and a sharp, pained grunt breaks loose as her strength starts to crumble. Orion snaps at her, telling her not to push too far, but Alice refuses to back down and insists she can still keep the fight going. Right then, the fire dragon screams so loud the air shakes, then charges up a blazing breath attack bigger than anything. Alice completely freezes the second that glow hits her, and Orion realizes the situation has turned brutally bad. The dragon unleashes a scorching, high-intensity beam in a brutal blast, driving it straight at them. Alice just stares, completely stunned, because as the blast's heat finally dies down, they're still standing somehow. Orion shoots his hand out and clamps onto her shoulder, then fires off an apology as he readies himself to step in and take over. Alice shouts for him like he's her master as Orion steps forward. Stepping straight into the glare, he finally felt ready to take on the dragon, face to face himself. Orion steps out into the open, dead serious, squaring up like he's about to take the blow head-on, while Alice rushes right behind him, teetering on the edge of panic, terrified of what he's risking. Then he clocks the incoming power as Crimson Mana and stays stone calm even as danger screams all around them. Right then, the fire dragon swings open its jaws and unleashes a huge, blinding blast of flame straight at them. Alice shrieks his name in full panic as the attack barrels in, but Orion doesn't even blink. As the dragon's breath crashes toward them, Orion's eyes lock in. He realizes it's just mana being puppeted, so he reaches out and decides he can seize control of it himself. He shoots his hand out toward the blazing crimson mana, itching to finally put his theory to the test. Alice keeps freaking out in the background, swearing this will never work and begging him to stop. Orion shoves aside every doubt and pours his all into it, screaming at the energy to explode and vanish the fear. It totally works, then that massive fire beam gets yanked off course, bending hard to the side and missing them completely. The redirected blast detonates with a massive flash, lighting up the whole area, yet Orion just stands there, unshaken, like nothing even happened. Alice freezes in pure shock, hiding behind him like her world just shattered. The dragon's own breath detonates into the wall with a thunderous blast, shaking the whole chamber as shockwaves rip through the air, and the fire dragon freezes, realizing its power just got flipped on it. Alice is totally unraveling, crouching and clamping her ears shut to survive the impact, while Orion stays stone calm, effortlessly letting his hand drop after he pulled off that impossible redirection. When the chaos finally fades, Alice snaps her gaze to him with wide eyes, completely lost, and blurts out, "What on earth did you just do?" She can barely get a word out, stammering through her sentence as Orion just stares back with a deadpan blank look, like he's already sick of explaining himself. Orion stares at the scorched track, the blast carved into the world, and swears it's either a dragon's breath or a pitiful knockoff pretending it is. Alice spirals into full panic, screaming that he can pull off a monster signature move, while Orion just turns away, rubs the back of his head, and admits he only figured out how to do it about a minute ago. Alice snaps that his magic has never made sense to her, but what he just pulled off shatters everything she thought was possible, and Orion tries to drag them back to the moment, promising he'll spill the full explanation later if they can actually escape. He tells her plain and loud that right now the mission is simple: take that dragon down for good. Alice just freezes, staring at him in total disbelief, like her brain just fried and stopped working. Once the smoke finally thins, the fire dragon is still standing, alive and absolutely furious, as it blasts out a massive, shaking roar. Alice locks eyes with the beast and demands to know what they're supposed to do if a hit like that still didn't land. Orion won't say a word, just tells her to stay. Staring the monster down as the real battle finally ignites. Orion locks eyes with the dragon, and you can tell he's done hesitating. He's ready to try something new right now. He thrusts his hand forward as a mana orb sparks into existence, then he glares at the swirling mana and growls that it must taste bitter being used like this. Orion stands in a field of glowing light, promising Alice that her magic is strong enough to crush a dragon. Then he hurls his challenge to the crimson mana, and the orbs start spinning around him. The fire dragon jerks its head up, and there it is, a massive surge of energy stacking itself into something terrifying, right above its face. Alice goes dead silent in sheer shock, realizing the magic Orion is gathering is none other than her own move. As a giant flaming bird starts to form, Orion finally cracks and admits his spell is nothing but a budget knockoff of Alice's magic. His imitation doesn't even brush against the sheer beauty of her original enchantment. Even if it's only a copy, Orion's face hardens as he insists it's more than enough to fuel his payback against the beast. Orion unleashes his magic and orders the dragon to be wiped out for good, slamming a colossal firebird into the monster with a furious dive straight through the chaos. Alice is stunned, blurting that the power hits on a whole new level even though it's the exact same spell she always uses. Then it clicks, and she realizes she's finally witnessing her master's real strength. Orion watches the blast hit, snaps at Alice that she's wrong, then admits he couldn't pull off that magic by himself, and says it. It only worked because she was standing right there. Orion watches his copy of Alice's spell finally land, and he blurts out that it definitely reached the dragon as wild energy swirls around them. Then reality hits. With everything he's studied, this kind of power shouldn't be possible at all under standard magic theory. Orion can't stop thinking about how wild this move is, because if anyone could actually pull off something like this, they'd instantly turn into a living legend. Right then the power surges to its limit, boom. A towering pillar of light blasts out, and you know a lost spell has just been unleashed, swallowing the whole area in pure radiance. Back in the village, the news spreads like wildfire. Everyone just heard the dungeon's been cleared, and they're all buzzing to celebrate because the fire dragon is finally defeated. Orion and Alice head to the local tavern to blow off steam, and Alice is practically glowing. She belts out a loud toast as they clink their mugs together, celebrating their huge win like it's cause for a festival. Alice is still buzzing from the fight, grinning ear to ear, as she brags about the huge pile of loot and materials they ripped straight from the dragon's corpse. Orion asks if those materials can even act as catalysts for her magic, and he leans in saying he's seriously pumped to see what she cooks up for her next research project. Then she grins and gladly agrees. Alice shifts the conversation and tells Orion that the guild receptionist was totally blindsided, like she couldn't even react. Then Alice shoots Orion a question. Did he swing by earlier to see how everything was going? Turns out the guild receptionist didn't take them seriously at first. She burst out laughing at the idea they'd killed a dragon, then her smile vanished fast as her temper snapped. And she completely freaks out the second she realizes the stuff they hauled back is the real deal. Back at the guild, the receptionist is totally freaking out over the dragon materials, stammering, spinning in circles with her words, and begging Orion to wait a second while she tries to catch up. Orion just stares, thinking her reaction is wildly overboard for monster parts. Then at the tavern, the innkeeper slams down a giant spread, stacking curry like it's meant for 3 people. Alice is already bright red with embarrassment, muttering that she's about to polish off 2 whole plates right in front of her master. Orion shrugs it off and tells her not to stress. Since her secret identity is already out, there's no point pretending to be some perfect, refined lady anymore. Alice snaps back, "Shut up," and drives a brutal kick under the table. The innkeeper just cackles like it's the funniest thing ever, while Alice storms back to pouting and shovels curry into her mouth, and Orion sits there looking shook after that sudden hit landed on his leg. The innkeeper clocks how bright Alice is and straight up asks if Orion finally gave in and made her his official student. Alice doesn't answer, but she's practically glowing, humming while she digs into her meal like everything just clicked. Alice breaks into laughter, admitting she hasn't officially become his disciple yet, but she can't stop grinning because they just hauled out a monster stack of dungeon materials. Orion jumps in right on cue, saying the loot was absolutely worth every second of the grind. The innkeeper stares at Orion and asks why he looks so freaking uneasy, wondering what kind of trouble could possibly make Orion hesitate to take the earnest girl, Alice, on as a student. Then Orion just grins and says he's got 0 complaints about her. The innkeeper leans in and basically tells Orion, "Look, just accept it, right now." He points out how wild it sounds when some high-ranking adventurer is down on their knees begging an unranked stranger to teach her. Then he pushes Orion to kill the awkwardness by simply saying yes. The innkeeper bursts into a loud laugh, clearly eating up the whole scene, then shrugs and says that, in the end, apprenticeships are really just a mirror of what each person wants for themselves. He tells you that after all these years in the business, he's learned how to read people like a book, and he's so confident in. He could tell right away that something special was brewing between the two of them. Ryan keeps shoveling food into his mouth, then shrugs and says the fact that he's even worried he might not be a good enough teacher proves he's actually decent. And as they lounge in the tavern, Orion can't stop thinking about how the world is packed with shady scammers, all hunting for ways to steal people's hard-earned money. He locks eyes with Alice and tells her, right to her face, that he can promise she's someone he can trust. Orion only grins to himself, wondering if that's truly how they work, or if he's missing something bigger between them. Suddenly, Alice bursts into panic and snaps at him, telling him not to fall for it so easily. She rips into the innkeeper on the spot, calling Orion a total dimwit, and then lays it all out, how he nearly signed away his life as a guarantor for some insanely sketchy loan papers just the other day. She's totally snapping now, screaming that if she hadn't dragged him back, he'd have been absolutely ruined, trapped in the mess he was about to create. Then she finally eases up, flashes a small smile and admits it. Yeah, he's a total mess sometimes, but the innkeeper was right, he's a good guy. Orion just scratches his head, cheeks burning, because she's basically spilling his dirty secrets for everyone to hear. Alice finally calls him master, tells him adventure ranks are basically just a formality, and she's. Sure enough, he's convinced everyone will clock just how awesome he really is, any day now. Orion gazed down, locked in thought, and realized something huge. The world doesn't flip just because one event happens. People's perspectives don't suddenly rewrite themselves, common sense doesn't magically reset, and authority doesn't lose its grip overnight. He kept thinking about it. Fear hits first when people don't understand, and that panic makes their first instinct slam the unknown away, or wipe it out completely. Lost in deep thought, Orion gets snapped out of it when Alice suddenly lights up with a brilliant idea and calls his name. She locks eyes with pure determination and pushes the idea. Next mission, we're hitting that mountain cave to track down and take out an ice dragon. Orion is stunned to his core by the suggestion, like his brain can't process what he's hearing. Alice doesn't even seem to clock his shock. She barrels on, saying she finally cracked what her weakness was in their last fight, then swears she'll win the next one. She tells Orion she'll take it alone so he won't even have to lift a finger, but Orion snaps back fast. There's no way he's letting her charge into something that reckless. Orion's jaw drops at her attitude. He expected the orc boss to rattle her into trauma, but nope, she's just vibrating with energy, practically begging for round two. He watches her get all fired up and realizes that if he actually leaves her to her own devices, she'll be bold enough to storm a dragon all by herself. Orion tries to shake off the weirdness, then looks down at the table like he's forcing himself back to reality. And he starts grilling her, pushing her to explain the whole master situation. Orion snaps his gaze to Alice and finally makes the call. Want to officially form a party with me? Alice doesn't even blink, leaps up and yells, I'm in, but Orion slams his finger up fast and stops her cold, then says there's a catch. He launches into a heated lecture, laying down the rule that reckless solo dragon hunting is off limits from now on, and makes it crystal clear. If she's going after something that massive, they're doing it together, no exceptions. As the talk dies down, the innkeeper strides over with a sundae in hand, spots the shock on Alice's face and goes, what's going on? Alice says Orion's acting like a full-on overprotective master, and the innkeeper just bursts into laughter. Then he grins and tells them they honestly look like the perfect master and student duo. Orion crossed his arms and snapped his gaze away, irritation rising at the comparison. Then he shrugged it off and insisted he was being totally normal, because of course anyone would worry when an acquaintance might get hurt. When Alice spots a crack in the moment, hope floods her face, so she blurts out, are you just gonna admit it and officially take me in as your student? Orion doesn't even pause. He snaps back that that's a whole different conversation. Alice lets out a tiny, crushing sigh, because once again the disciple front shuts her down. Staring at the empty plates on the table, Orion can't help but go quiet, because he's still shocked at how everything spiraled, especially after his old party tossed him out, and he was dead sure he'd be a lone adventurer for the rest of his life. He can't believe it. He never imagined he'd see this day, not like this, and not so damn early where he'd actually be able to breathe easy with the thought of jumping back into a party again. Alice cheers goodbye to Orion, yelling she'll catch him tomorrow, and Orion glances back with a quiet little smile as he promises they'll meet at the workshop. Later, two boots tap out a soft, steady beat while someone slips through the area like a shadow. Turns out Luna's lurking right nearby. She's crouched behind the trees, eyes locked on the duet, and worry twists her face the whole time. A few hours earlier, Luna looms outside a cave entrance, totally wrecked by indecision, while Daniel nearby starts losing his cool, snapping Orion's name into the air like it's the only thing keeping him sane. Daniel is spiraling out over rumors that Orion is a high-level mage. He's yelling it's all garbage, claiming Orion's just a rankless dropout, swearing it can't be true, but deep down, Daniel can't deny Orion's actually talented. Daniel flashes a creepy grin and tells Luna he's meeting someone today to crush the rumors and prove the truth to everyone, while Luna just stares at him, like she can't believe he's really being this petty. Luna lets out a heavy sigh, muttering to herself that Daniel's deep grudge is pathetic, like he's fighting ghosts over nothing. Deep in the forest, Yulia, this young girl with worry in her eyes, pushes through the trees, calling out, begging anyone to tell her where her big sister, Alice, went. Daniel steps right up to her, smiles, and tells her he's been waiting. Yulia tilts her head, looks him in the eyes, and asks if he's the Daniel she's been searching for. While Yulia keeps scanning the crowd for her sister, Daniel suddenly blurts a shocker. He drops the real truth. Alice isn't actually one of the. That party was a hard no from the start. Yulia gets blindsided by the news and blurts a shocked gasp, clutching Daniel's gear as anger flares, demanding if he tricked her, because she only came at all believing she'd be heading to a party with her sister, Alice. Daniel's panic hits like a wave, sweat pours down as he blurts that this whole mess has stunned him too, and he pleads for her to breathe and just give him 1 second to talk. Daniel tries to steer the talk, then leans in and asks Yulia straight up if Alice really was her senior back when they both attended the Magic Academy. Yulia's mind snaps back to her school days. Alice was basically a legend, graduating first in her class, yet she still took the time to reach out and actually talk to a dropout like Yulia. Suddenly, Yulia's eyes blaze with excitement as she clocks it. Just like that, the truth hits. She gazes up at Daniel, eyes sparkling, and asks if he really wants to hear the whole tale of how she and her sister first crossed paths. Daniel's face screams he'd rather be anywhere else, yet he lets out this awkward laugh and tells her he's going to pass on the little trip down memory lane. From way over there, Luna can tell Daniel's patience is running on empty. This whole mess is boring him to death, while Yulia in the background totally zones out, ignoring his mood as she keeps rambling about her sister like nothing's happening. Yulia shot up one finger, locked onto her point, then dove headfirst into her story and Daniel tried to slam it shut, but it just wouldn't listen. Daniel bends in close to Yulia and whispers that there's a real reason her sister isn't in the hero party. Then Yulia stares at him, totally thrown off by the secret. Without missing a beat, Daniel spins a straight-up lie, telling her a scumbag mage named Orion is manipulating Alice, that Alice was meant to work with the heroes, but got tricked into practically begging to be Orion's student. And while Yulia's caught in it, Luna watches from behind a wall, disgust written all over her face. The thought of her legendary sister becoming some rando's apprentice hits Yulia like a punch. Her whole body starts to shake as she spirals, convinced the person behind it has zero fear of the gods. Daniel admits he knows exactly how terrifying Alice gets when she turns serious. He looks completely drained even just talking about her, while Alice stands stone still in his mind's eye. He keeps the hustle going, leaning in to tell Yulia that Orion's a straight-up dangerous scammer, so slippery he even managed to snag Alice like she was nothing. Meanwhile, Luna stays buried in the shadows, watching every move as the manipulation tightens around them. Luna hits her breaking point, gripping the stone wall so hard her whole body trembles, and all she can think is that Daniel is officially the worst person she's ever met. Hunched in the shadows, Luna stares in disbelief as Daniel spits out lies by the truckload. Then Daniel spins on his heel and tells Yulia that because she's an elite mage and so close to her sister, he's got a special favor he wants from her. Daniel drops the truth. His real plan is to recruit Alice for the heroes' party. So he leans on Yulia and tells her to cripple Orion's reputation until the whole town turns their backs on him. Then, with Orion isolated and Trust dead, Daniel steps in and finishes the job himself. He leans in and tells Yulia that if they stir up just a little trouble, Orion will crack and finally show who he really is. Then he meets her gaze and presses, right to her face, asking if she thinks she can handle messing with him for his sake. Luna can barely process what she's hearing. She peeks from behind the wall with a stone-flat stare, like she can't even blink at the shock. 1. Staring at this painfully sloppy, glaringly obvious lie, I couldn't figure out how anyone could even fall for it. Yulia's steaming now. She's ready to rip Orion apart and expose him as the fraud she just knows he is, all because of her sister, and Luna can only stare, stunned that the girl actually swallowed Daniel's lies. To make it worse, Daniel leans in and spills fresh gossip. Orion and Alice have been disappearing together, locked in an alchemy workshop for their research, and just that thought sends Yulia spiraling. Jealousy hits her like a tidal wave, so she snaps, no more waiting. This whole situation feels dead wrong to her, and she vows she's charging in there right now. As Yulia storms off toward the workshop, Luna gets left behind under a tree, freaking out. She has no clue how to deal with this disaster, or what she's even supposed to do next. Luna refuses to sit still, so she sneaks after them, telling herself that if things start turning scary or getting out of control, she'll jump in and shut it down. The story jumps to Orion's alchemy workshop, a tough, solid building where Orion and Alice have been hammering away at their work. Inside, Alice is pitching in and clutching a teddy bear, and when she spots Orion all distracted, she leans in and asks what's weighing on his mind. Orion grips a handful of the dark materials they've been digging into, brushes her away at first, and swears it's nothing. He's just lost in his thoughts. Then he stops cold and rethinks everything. Maybe it's time he finally explains how his magic actually works to her. The moment he brings it up, Alice's eyes go wide and she blurts out, "Wait, are you seriously serious?" Staring at the materials in his hand, Orion decides, if they're going to keep working side by side, she deserves the truth, because once she learns his. Once she gets the secret, she'll realize there's no reason to keep playing his student. Then she'll probably walk right out the door. Orion blurts out that he should have told her his secret ages ago, and Alice can barely contain her excitement. She's finally about to learn the truth behind his magic. Just as they're caught up in it, a thunderous knock slams the workshop door, and both of them snap their heads toward the entrance as Orion demands who's there. Orion swings the door open and freezes. Yulia stands there, all sharp focus, telling him she heard a guy named Orion is staying here. Orion lifts a hand to greet her, calm as ever, and confirms he's exactly the one she's been searching for. The second he confirms it, Yulia snaps her finger straight at him and totally loses control. She calls him the root of all evil and warns him to get ready for what's coming. Orion's mind reels from the kid's nonstop energy, but Yulia doesn't ease up for a second. She barrels straight into his space, swears she'll rip off his disguise, and promises to rescue Alice from him no matter what it takes. Alice peeks out from behind Orion, completely lost by what she's seeing, and Orion instantly clicks the pieces together. He's sure she's got to be a friend or family member of Alice's. Instead of snapping back, Orion just grins and motions her inside, asking if she wants to step into the workshop for a bit. Yulia gets even more flustered by how chill he is, so she snaps, asking if he's just putting on a cool act and demanding he stop teasing her. She freezes in place for a brief heartbeat, silent as the air before the storm. But then she huffs, stomps her feet, and marches into the workshop anyway. Orion stands there with his arms crossed, looking dead annoyed, and demands Alice tell him who this girl is meant to be. Alice freezes just as hard at the sudden arrival. Before anyone can even blink, Yulia rockets forward and yells for her sister, leaving Alice utterly stunned as she pops up out of nowhere. Yulia clamps Alice in a giant, crushing hug and screams with joy that she finally found her sister. Yet Alice is so smothered by the sudden squeeze she can't even squeeze out a single full word. Alice panics hard and snaps at Yulia to get off her, right there in front of Orion, who just slumps in the background, looking completely wiped out by the whole mess. Alice finally steadies herself, clears her throat, and tells Orion, "I'll handle the introductions," while Yulia just stands there, glaring like she's upset about everything. Yulia isn't even trying to hide it. She pouts, turns her face away, and looks like she'd rather be anywhere else. Yulia gripes to Alice that she shouldn't even waste her breath introducing herself to a guy like Orion, and before she can blink, Alice snaps, slams her down for calling her a dummy, and scolds her for being disrespectful, right there in front of their master. The two of them start snapping back and forth, and Orion just stands there, completely awkward. Finally, he lets out a heavy sigh and tells Alice to hurry up and introduce the girl so they can get moving. Alice lets out a heavy sigh, points at Yulia, and tells everyone that this loud kid is actually a girl. She figured it out back at the Magic Academy. She leans in and reveals the truth. Yulia wasn't just any girl, she was her junior at school. At school, she leaned into her one true specialty, crafting catalysts. Julia jabs her finger straight at Orion and yells that he's totally tricked her sister, while Alice stands right behind her, frozen in sheer shock at the accusation that came out of nowhere. Orion just lets out a tired sigh, clutching his tea, and thinks about how he's been getting pulled into these annoying misunderstandings nonstop lately. Yulia grabs Alice's attention and shouts that she has to wake up and face the truth, because she swears she heard a rumor about what kind of guy Orion really is. Yulia screams that Orion is just a parasite, trying to leech off Alice, and it's so absurd Orion snaps, flinging his tea everywhere from pure shock. As Orion in the background chokes and coughs on his drink, Alice's face turns pale with shock. She blurts out that Yulia must have learned a leech trashy word from somewhere. Alice lunges in, clamps her hand over Yulia's mouth to shut it down, then blurts out an apology to Orion, saying the kid's stubborn as hell, and once an idea locks in her head, she won't listen to a word. Orion just stares for a second, and realizes she's basically doing the same thing Alice does. Yulia keeps thrashing in place, muffling her cries, while Alice clamps a firm hand over her mouth, refusing to let a single sound slip out. Yulia finally breaks in, stares everyone down with fierce resolve, and snaps that since it's come to this, she's got a brand new plan. She snatches Alice's hand and blares that she's crashing Orion's party too, and Alice is totally blindsided. Yulia lays out her plan. She'll join forces to tear Orion down as a fraud, then grab Alice and return her to the guild, while Orion just freezes there, staring. Standing there completely baffled by everything that was happening. Yulia shuts Alice down hard, calling out her selfishness and demanding she snap out of it and face reality. Then the two sisters explode into a rough scuffle, kicking up a cloud of dust, while Orion can only stand there on the sidelines, drowning in pure stress. Orion takes a sip of his tea, eyes narrowing as Yulia flashes that masked remark at him, only he's got no clue what she even means. He glances at the supplies and suddenly realizes it. Since Yulia is a catalyst compounding specialist, she could be the perfect powerhouse for the research they're driving. While Yulia keeps tinkering with Alice, Orion can't shake the thought that maybe this girl won't lift a finger to help them at all. He keeps sipping his tea, clocking that if Yulia's mission is to eventually drag Alice back to the guild, then her joining the party is basically the perfect setup for him. Orion stands over his research gear, admitting to himself that his plans usually blow up in his face. Then Alice swings around and demands his final call. Yulia struts in, all smug, and tells Orion he'd be making a reckless mistake by letting her join, because she swears she can see straight through every lie he tries to sell. Alice looks completely drained by her sister's attitude, then snaps to Yulia. She's about to reveal Orion's true nature. Alice shuts the argument down on the spot. She grabs Julia's cheek and tells her, straight to her face, that she's crashing into the party with, or without her permission. Orion stays calm and insists he's not bothered at all by what's happening, but Alice snaps, bursting into a huge shout of pure disbelief, while Yulia just freezes, staring in shock at the sudden noise. Yulia's body starts oozing dark energy. Her eyes harden into a deadly stare as she demands, "Are you just messing with me?" Then she warns them they'd better be ready for whatever comes next. Orion looks downright awkward while Alice sulks in the background, seething because Orion warmed up to Yulia way too fast, while it took her forever just to earn even a sliver of his good side. After a while, the crew finally makes its way to Orion's alchemy workshop, this tiny stone shack tucked deep in the woods, quiet as a secret. In the workshop, Alice suddenly hesitates and blurts, "Is it really okay for us to be here?" because she's terrified of overhearing the secret behind how his magic truly works. Yulia is back to clinging to her sister like crazy, but Alice is stuck in her own head. She even admits it feels totally strange hearing his secrets when she's not his student yet. Not officially. Orion watches how Alice carries herself, and it clicks. She's dead serious, brutally honest, and she never plays games with anything. Orion admits to the girls, plain as day, that even he can't fully wrap his head around how his magic works, so they shouldn't expect miracles, and then Alice slides onto the bed with Yulia, pushing once more for one last answer, asking if he's really sure about sharing all of this with them. The second Orion flashes the green light, Alice's eyes light up, and she starts vibrating with pure excitement. Pure excitement crackles in her. She's practically begging to hear every word he's about to drop. Yulia snaps at her sister for being rude, but Alice doesn't fold. She fires back that chasing lessons from some unranked nobody, probably a total fake, won't help them one bit. Yulia pouts and demands she's getting in on this too. Alice erupts, yelling right back, clearly boiling over from her sister's sheer stubbornness. Suddenly, Alice flips a switch and goes absolutely feral with excitement. She leans in to tell Yulia they should finally listen to his amazing lecture, then dares to suggest they become his disciples together, while Alice practically radiates hype and Yulia just stares back with a deadpan. Really? Yulia flatly shuts it down and snaps that she hates the idea. Then the sisters start yapping and shoving each other, while Orion just stands there looking helpless, asking if he can finally kick off the lesson. Orion kicks off the lecture by breaking down the basics, how magic usually runs on an element affinity, and a chant that turns words into real effects, like striking a flame just to beat the cold, and then he stares at them, asking if they've always understood it that way. Alice shoots her hand up and agrees, then quickly adds that Orion is the one exception. Yulia stares at him like he just vanished from reality and blurts, "Wait, what are you even saying?" She can't shake the thought that he's trying to reveal a whole new way to use magic, and Alice just watches, silent and sharp, waiting for his next move. Alice demands he show that move, and Orion rubs the back of his head, then admits it's kind of humiliating for him. Flustered to the bone, Orion snaps into position, rattling off a chant about fire crushing his enemies as he grips his hand like a loaded gun. Orion plants himself in the center of the workshop and strikes a dramatic pose as the girls stare, hanging on his every move, face set, serious as ever as he starts gearing up to show off his one-of-a-kind magic style. Yulia watches Orion like a hawk and insists that nothing's happened. She's not even surprised, since he's unranked and probably can't use magic. Then right as she finishes, Orion calls up Crimson Mana and orders it to fire, and a blazing fireball snaps into existence in front of him, leaving Yulia utterly speechless. Alice is totally fired up and blasts Yulia with, "Did you see that?" Then she can't stop bragging about how that's the real power of her master, while Yulia just freezes in total shock. Yulia snaps back to her feet and starts yelling again, telling Orion to stop acting so tough just because he fired that tiny little fire bullet. Orion shoots back that he wasn't trying to brag at all. Yulia, fired up to prove a point, steps forward and tells him that if he wants to be her sister's teacher, he better stand on her level. Then she hammers out a chant to smash her enemies and whips up her own scorching flame. Yulia smirks like she owns the world, bragging that her magic comes from her superior imagination, while Orion marches right up to the fire she summoned, and Alice just slumps, completely drained by the nonstop arguing. Yulia presses Orion and asks if he finally gets that he's not good enough to be near her sister. Orion freezes up, then admits he never once felt worthy in the first place. The vibe turns heavy fast. Alice stares at Orion, shocked, because he doesn't snap back at her sister's barbs. Orion lifts his head, eyes half hidden in shadow, and locks onto Alice as he finally starts talking, right there, like he's ready to spill the truth about how his magic really works. Orion stares down the flames, then drops the huge secret, telling the girls why his magic is really because he can actually see the mono itself. Alice and Yulia just freeze there with blank stares, totally shell-shocked by what they've just heard, while Orion starts sweating, because his biggest secret finally burst out of his mouth. Then his mind rockets back to when he was a kid. Daniel used to point and mock him, yelling he was a liar for the whole crowd to hear, and Emily would scramble to shut him up. Even random strangers on the street would jump in to yell at Orion, because he'd get so lost in the mana, he saw that he'd almost walk right into them. He still remembers how suffocating it felt to be the weird kid. Everyone in town would whisper behind his back, calling him a space cadet who never noticed a thing around him. Right here in this moment, Orion just stands there thinking, man, I must look insane to everyone else. To the average person, he's nothing but some guy babbling about stuff that's never even been real. Alice shatters the silence, firing off his words again, demanding to know if he's really serious about seeing Mana, and you can practically see her trying to cram the whole impossible idea into her head. Orion clocks how calm she's acting and says she doesn't look shocked at all, so Alice lifts a hand to her face and admits the truth. She's totally losing it. She's just hiding it on the outside. Yulia absolutely won't stay calm. She blurts out that she can't believe this wild story, then stops cold, because if Orion's telling the truth, it's the only explanation for how her sister got this good at magic so fast. Yulia's brain is basically frying, and when Orion flashes her a shaky smile, he just shrugs, because her reaction is exactly what he's braced for every time he tells the truth. Orion locks his gaze on the fireball Yulia sparked earlier, and to him, it's more than just flame. He can actually pick out the structure, watching emerald mana braid right into the heart of the red and orange energy. Orion folds his arms and gives Yulia real credit, telling her that the way she arranges her mana. Anna's actually wildly impressive, turning out he isn't just all talk, he's got real game. Yulia huffs like she's furious, staring at Orion and snapping, "You really think you can just look at my magic and get it?" Orion doesn't just talk. He thrusts out his hand and starts weaving the mana orbs himself, then says he has to push the green mana a little higher before he barks for the crimson mana to come in and sync up. With one sharp command, Orion unleashes the spell. Then a brutal burst of flames detonates in front of them, flooding the room with scorching heat and blinding light. Yulia gets hurled back by the raw blast, eyes wide with pure terror. She shrieks that his fireball is way bigger than hers, yelling that this can't possibly be happening. Alice shot her sister a smug, proud look and asked, "Did you see that?" Then she told Yulia that Orion can copy any mana he lays his eyes on, while Yulia slumped in the background, looking completely soul-crushed. Alice is on fire right now. She's blasting the truth out loud, saying things have been wild for ages, but now that she's cracked his secret, every piece clicks into place. Julia starts whipping her arms around, totally unraveling, screaming that this is basically a full-on scam and it has no right to even be happening. Alice plants her hands on her hips and warns Yulia to knock it off before this turns into real rage, but Yulia snaps back that the whole thing is nonsense that never should have existed. Alice shrugs off logic entirely, her eyes blaze, her whole vibe turns sparkly and electric, and she yells that the power to pull off the impossible is exactly why Orion is so special. Yulia just stands there, stunned out of her mind, like she can't even move, she can only. She just kept murmuring Alice's words, how he's the one asterisk who pulls off the impossible. Yulia locks eyes with Orion, practically sparkling with starry worship, and starts calling him her master right on the spot, but Orion throws up a hand like, whoa, slow down, because this is spiraling out of control. Alice jumps in to steer her, reminding Yulia she's got a noble mission, bring Alice back home, and Orion just stares at them with a worn-out look while Alice clears her throat and pushes them back to the real topic. Alice steadies herself, locks back in, and nods, then whips around to Orion and blurts the question she's been holding back, straight up asking what Mana looks like through his eyes. Orion starts talking, jabbing a finger into the air, showing them the stuff they can't see, then hits them with it. Right this second, Mana's just zipping around everywhere, and to him it looks like nothing but scattered glowing spheres. As Alice and Julia lean in, Orion pauses mid-sentence and shuts his eyes for a beat, admitting the truth, explaining how he sees the world to anyone else is way harder than it sounds. Alice can't stop gushing. She says it's a sight her brain can't even picture, then she presses him. Is he really telling her that his whole field of view is packed all the time with those mysterious orbs, glowing in the 6 elemental colors? Orion quickly shuts her down, breezing in that it's not actually 6 colors. Then Alice snaps, screaming that if it's Mana, how can it possibly ignore the 6-element rule? Orion leans in and tells her, that's why I tanked so badly with those modern magic textbooks back then. He explains that the Mana he sees doesn't slot neatly into just 6 categories, so every lesson built on that idea just never clicked for him. Alice finally locks onto the truth. She fires off the question. Is it his bizarre way of seeing Mana that's the real reason he can throw chantless magic around so effortlessly?